All right, Kingkillers, we're covering chapters 115 through 116 in this episode. Talk about the fight between Shehyn and Penthe and sexy time between Kvothe and Vashet. Plus, we discuss why Kvothe's fighting skill is the worst argument for the Mary Sue proponents and whether he could have called the wind had he never learned sympathy. We also reminisce about Fitz, our long-lost co-host, and discuss the differences and similarities between Shehyn and Tim, and Tim tells us what gets him aroused in books. So sit back and enjoy. All right, welcome back to the Kingkiller podcast. I'm Dan. Got with me Tim. What's going on?
I am here. Hello. Hi.
We got a big tournament brewing on the horizon here. These people who are listening to this episode is probably already started for them. But if you're not on our Twitter, you should get on there because we got a big tournament coming.
It's so what's the mix there? It's basically combos of
we're doing
your fantasy characters
top duo in fantasy to try and take over the world. So like obviously you got Pinky and the Brain, who are the number one fantasy duo in the history of fantasy. Everybody agrees with that. There's no contention there. But who's the second best duo to try and take over the world? That's the big mystery.
So if Pinky and the Brain are included, then that could be like...
No, they're not included because it would be an automatic they would win. They get 100% of the vote every time. It's just...
Well, what I'm saying...
One of the only things that exists that you could do a poll on that would get 100% every single time.
You did have a qualifier, though, right? Like no immortals or something?
Yeah, it was more like no immortal gods. I'm not like super strict on it. Like Hoyd is going to be in the tournament.
Okay.
Like one of the groups, it looks like Hoyd and Elodin are going to be a duo together.
Is Cinder in the?
No Cinder. Nobody submitted Cinder. There's like some of the big hitters. It's looking like Kaladin and Shallan. I'm still running polls to see which duos are going to be together, but it looks like Elodin and Hoyd, that's Runaway. They're gonna be together.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Looking like that Kaladin and Ven from Mistborn are gonna be together, and then we got Kvothe, who that's the closest race right now because Kvothe's partner is either gonna be Kelsier from Mistborn, Shallan from Stormlight, or Tyrion from A Song of Ice and Fire. And Tyrion and Kelsier are one vote away from each other, and Shallan's in third right now, 5 votes back at first. So that poll will end tonight. So
I think I like Tyrion with Puppet. That's my combo.
Tyrion's gonna have a good partner no matter what. He's gonna be a top seeded player because if he's not with Kvothe, he's gonna be with one of the other top tier people.
Is there any Daenerys Targaryens in there?
I believe someone is put forth Daenerys, but yeah, she'll likely be in the poll. There's a lot of good ones. Those are some of the big hitters, but yeah, I mean, pretty much Locke Lamora, Fitz. That's what a handful of names. There's some Harry Potter characters. I got the 16 seeds. I picked myself. Those are going to be great. I think everybody's going to like the 16 seeds. There's some funny choices in there for them.
I put in Janos, Slint, and Brandur. Thought that was a tight combo.
Yeah, that's more of a
big pieces of shit.
That'll be in for the worst duo.
Yeah.
The worst duo to try and rule.
Well, that was a separate bracket, right? That was a separate tournament or whatever.
Yeah.
The losers bracket.
We'll do that one. We'll do that one after. But yeah, so if you're not following us on Twitter, get on there because we got some good tourney going on right now. Some good tourney action. A lot of money in Vegas on this thing. It's one of the hottest things in Vegas right now. It hadn't even came out, but for you guys it has. So you can look. I'm sure it's already up on the Vegas wire. And yeah,
they're running
a lot of
odds,
money being exchanged on these matchups.
Wow. Yeah, so it really broke through, huh? Nice.
Yeah, it's huge. Huge.
Yeah, cool.
Yeah, NBA playoffs, they've been putting the games back schedule. They're going to reschedule some of the games to make sure that they're not on the same day as one of our polls.
Yeah, well, you want to make sure you get as many eyes as possible.
Yeah.
Make the schedules work.
Be like having an NBA game on the same day as the Super Bowl. It's like, what's the fucking point at that? Why would you do that?
I mean, still today, it's pretty clear. Like the NFL has it down in terms of like the schedule for, basically Americans to be able to watch games. The NFL has probably the best system thus far where it's like, you set your watch to it basically. Much easier to predict or much easier to know the schedule, I guess you could say, than other games. But I mean, the sport's so different, it kind of goes to that. But yeah, I guess we're sending them all off kilter with this tournament, so they're just gonna have to deal with it.
Yeah,
brace themselves.
It's gonna be it's gonna really, if we run this a poll like this during the NFL playoffs, it's gonna totally screw them up.
Well, it's good to be influential in that way, right? They start coming at us, trying to influence us to move dates and to quiet down. But I don't. Are you going to quiet down? I mean, if you're a 16 seed, are you going to quiet down?
No. This it's gonna be massive. It's gonna be a huge cultural event. I'm sure, like I said, it's already out for the people who are listening to this, so you guys are already enmeshed in it. I'm sure you heard about it outside of the podcast, just walking down the street. But if you're just living under a rock and you don't turn on the TV and hear all the influential people talking about it, then yeah, now you know. Get on our Twitter.
So
get them votes in.
I think if you're this 16 seed, I'm matching you with what? Either Jano Slint or maybe Doug.
Jano Slint and Doug, Doug.
No, I'm talking about you match with them.
Me? Why would I match with them?
You put yourself in as a 16
No, I didn't
seed.
say I put myself in. I said I picked the 16 seeds.
Oh, I thought you were talking about yourself.
No. I picked them.
You're some fantasy hero.
No. I got some great.
I mean, you're a fan in your own mind.
I'm real.
You have
I'm a real boy. I'm a real boy.
Real boy. You went through the evolution. You went through the evolution that Pinocchio went through.
Yeah,
that's nice. That's good. That's reassuring. There's hope for all of us, right?
Yeah, we got some good ones. Let's see. We got Tattersail, Gregor. We got Wayne and the Lopin are going to be a team. That's a going to be a duo. That's going to be a duo that's going to get a lot of votes.
Because I mean, how many is the Lopin? Do we even know?
The Lopin? He's just one guy.
Oh, what am I thinking of? Who's the
one? You know who Lopin is, right? From Stormlight Archive.
Yeah, but he has all the cousins, right?
Yeah, he doesn't. They don't call themselves the Lopin though.
Oh,
it's just that's Lopin's his name, but they're all his cousins. Like, and they're not actually his cousins, but he calls all of them his cousin. There's all of Herdasia or Herdasians, or however you say it, Hardasians, whatever you say.
I have to
they
be
are
a little
all his
bit,
cousin.
I have to be a little bit careful because I noticed just by a couple of pairings that I'm finding some things out, or I'm getting hints of how things are going to go for the books.
Yeah, I told you to not look in those things.
Yeah, well,
I told you massive spoilers in those things.
Well, I didn't. Well, yeah, I guess I forgot. But whatever. I mean, once I saw like one thing, I was like, all right, well, I guess I need to sort of be more careful here.
You got to read those books faster.
Yeah, there's also that.
But all right, so we are diving into 115 and the title is Storm and Stone. And in this chapter, we get Kvothe and Vashet doing a little bit of training. He learns a little bit about the society, and then he goes and watches the fighting, especially with Shehyn and Penthe.
This is so great on like the world building. What's so interesting about how the world building works is it every time something gets emphasized of a difference for any piece of society, everything else stands in contrast, you know? So it's really great, man. It's kind of helps you to understand the world a little bit better. Every time something like this happens, you see a little bit clearer where they are in terms of like technology and just how their world works, how the functionality of things are. They're a very interesting culture, that's for sure.
Yeah, and I mean, and he lays it out expressly. Like he says, I woke the next morning knowing the truth. My only way out of this situation was through the school. I needed to prove myself. That meant I needed everything Vashet could teach me as quickly as possible. So, it starts off with, it ended the last chapter where he heard the 99 songs and he realized, oh shit, this is serious.
Mm-hmm.
And he found out how serious it was with what they would do to him if he didn't succeed. And he's like, okay, so we got to take this to a whole nother level. Like, they wouldn't have let me walk out of here if I wanted to, so I have to succeed at this. He's starting to realize that his life's on the line.
Yeah, that was pretty stressful.
Not so much his life, but at least they would maim his hands. He would have to, and if they were going to maim his hands, he would fight for his life. So yeah, his life is
for him. Yeah, for him, that's his life. And Tempe, and just, basically, that the end of the last chapter was very stressful. Yeah. He's like basically to freak out mode, where he's basically having like a, not like a midlife crisis, but a crisis of sorts, where he's basically like running through it's almost like his life was flashing before his eyes to some degree, where he's like reviewing experiences throughout his life as he like fell asleep, which was pretty cool. This chapter is also interesting in terms of how I guess this and the next one, you can feel that it's being narrated by Kvothe.
Yeah, 100%.
Which is kind of interesting because there's so many that you don't really feel it, you know what I mean? But like there are certain ways he suggests like, oh, I should step back and explain this place to you. I don't think I did a good enough job before.
Yeah.
And he kind of does the same thing when he talks about her smell, Vashet's smell, where he's like, let me try to do this delicate. And he's like, I can't do it delicate. This is what it was.
Yeah. Yeah. You really get the impression that he's talking to Chronicler or the reader specifically in those moments. Yeah. You're not with Kvothe in the scene. You're basically sitting with Kvothe telling the story of Kvothe. You really get the, it's like bringing into focus that there's an interlude, there's stuff going on in these interludes without bringing in an interlude,
Yeah, it's a delicate sort of balance that it stands out because so many times you forget. I mean, you don't totally forget, but every now and then it comes to interlude and you're like, oh yeah, you get these little reminders. Because you get lost in the world, in the stories.
Yeah, and so he goes, I realize now that I may have given an inaccurate impression of Hert. And then he goes and starts describing it. And he's like, it was no thriving metropolis, obviously, and it couldn't be considered a city by any stretch of the imagination. And he talks about it's a real small town, but not in a degrading way. It's just in a matter-of-fact way that it's a small town. And then... Go ahead.
I like the emphasis of half the world is made up of tiny communities that have grown around nothing more than a crossroads market or a good clay pit or a bend of river strong enough to turn a mill wheel. Like that type of world building is huge because where you can visualize it. And then he throws things like the houses being bigger and patched, so they're being kept, and then like the kids being like fat and people being generous and happy. And that tells you how the world is. Noir is not like that, right? It looks like at some time they have some families, so it looks like maybe Noir's fallen on hard times because of what he did to the world, right?
Yeah.
I guess.
Well, I guess it was kind of a poor town to begin with. It's a poor town getting hit harder now than they
Mm-hmm.
typically would. So they already didn't have a lot of maneuverability. At least some of the families. It seems like some of them will make it through, but the Bentleys are on hard times, and they're not
Mm-hmm.
going to make it with what's going on. So, but it's not a wealthy town by any stretch of the imagination, but not poor, so poor that they can't go to a bar.
Yeah, well, and it's interesting. Well, and they talk so consistently about how they have no customers, right?
Yeah.
But it's really interesting the way the bar is because it has pepper and cinnamon and chocolate and wines and drinks from all over the world. It
Yeah.
seems, right? Like it's and he's got gold. I mean, he's got the
Yeah,
ability to like change.
his bar would work in a massive city. You know, he
Yeah.
could go into Emre, or he could go into Tarbian and set up shop and make loot.
Yeah, it seems like it doesn't fit,
No,
right? When he chose this location, right?
yeah,
So at least that's what we think. So it's anomaly in that area because it's like fully outfitted to except for music, right? It's fully outfitted for, like you said, providing. It could be by the university, it could be, and it closely resembles, at least to some degree, or at least we have that example of early on Kvothe. I don't remember who that guy was. It wasn't Anchor, right? Was it Anchor? It was some guy that owned a bar that did Kvothe, some solids basically, and he was like, he got in his mind. This is like really early on. He got in his mind that it wouldn't be half bad.
Oh no,
An
that was
occupation.
in Tarbian.
Yeah. Okay.
That was
Yeah.
when he was leaving Tarbian his last night there. He went and took a bath at the guy's place. I don't know if we get the guy's name. If we do, it's it's just mentioned
Mm-hmm.
and not memorable. But yeah, he went, and that was when he took the bath and walked out of there butt naked and walking down the street.
That's so great. And basically plays like he's Ambrose.
Yeah, it's
That's so
hilarious
awesome.
scene.
Yeah.
But
But
yes, the way he describes the prosperous towns, he's like, you have rich soil, generous weather, some thrive on the trade moving through them. The wealth of these places is obvious. The houses are large, well mended, people are friendly and generous. And then he talks about like towns where the soil is thin and tired, towns where the mill burned down or clay was mined out years ago. In these places, the houses are small and badly patched. The people are lean and suspicious, and wealth is measured in small, practical ways. Cords of firewood, a second pig, 5 jars of blackberry preserve. So it's like any savings whatsoever. Anything that is not, continuing your day to day survival is like that's wealth to them, is having, a backup meal and that kind of stuff.
Mhm.
So like that's the poor towns. And he's like, that's what I expected Hart to be. And at first glance, that's what I thought it would be. He's like, but then when you look closer, you realize, no, this is different. Like and he goes, but while most of the ADEM homes I had seen were relatively small, they weren't the same sort you would find in a desperate Aturan town, made of sod and logs clinked with mud. The ADEM homes were all snug stone, fit together as cunningly as I had ever seen. There were no cracks letting in the endless wind, no leaking roofs, no creaking leather hinges on the door. The windows were oiled sheepskin or empty
Weren't.
holes with wooden shutters. They were fitted glass, tight as you would find in any baker's manor. And then, instead of fireplaces, they have iron stoves. Like they have wealth that is practical for the
Mhm.
world that they live in. Like the
Mhm.
having everything fit solidly, no wind getting through would be important in a town that is getting ripped by the wind constantly.
Mhm.
So that makes sense to have that. But then, they got the iron stoves instead of fireplaces, so they're not getting their houses filled up with smoke and ruining everything. And so they've got wealth that is much more subtle, but they're not living like paupers. They have, if they need something to make their life comfortable, they have it.
I like the Tarbine example that we were given early on, where we see one side of town, it's super desperate. But of course, we're seeing people living on the street and they're super desperate, cutthroats. They don't have anything, so they're beggars. On the other side of town, you can't even go. Like they're super wealthy. Somebody gives them like a silver talent, right? and then he gets chased out of the fucking town. It kind of reminds me like those extremes in a city that's that large would have both extremes, right? But in these towns, you're getting a town that has, well, we're getting these examples of towns that are more wealthy. Herit's an anomaly in the case that they don't have ostentatious wealth. They have wealth that's practically purposed, and that's utilized, right? Instead of having the oil skin, whatever they said, oil sheepskin, or like instead of windows, they have literal windows, glass windows.
Yeah.
And there was a point where he talked about that around the university, where you could see the signs of wealth around those certain cities because they had real windows and they had, practical purposed homes. In here it's just it's odd because of how different it would look, but that's because of the weather, right?
Yeah, and you also like like the things you pointed out. There were beeswax candles or lamps that burned a clean white oil, and once through a distant window, I recognized the unwavering red light of a sympathy lamp. So like instead of having wax that doesn't burn clean, like guttering talo tapers or reed lights, like he mentions, instead of having things like that, they have beeswax candles or they have sympathy lamps. And so even when it comes to something like that, providing light inside the house, they do it in the clean way, and it's more expensive, but it's cleaner and better. So they have the money where they can sacrifice, pay for not having to deal with unclean rooms or, unhealthy smoke filling up their house and stuff like that. There's, and it fits with their nature that these would be the things that they would spend their money on, like, because they are so concerned with cleanliness. So getting the candles that burn the cleanest, or the lamps that don't burn at all, or iron stove instead of a fireplace. These are the kind of things they would do, considering how much cleanliness and that kind of stuff is prominent in their society.
Yeah, and probably maybe the best description that he offers to kind of summarize what we're saying is this community was comfortably, quietly prosperous, right? So from first glance, and it's funny too, man, because he talks about first glance, he sees the way the Adim are, and they all look fidgety, right? When he first saw Tempe. And then later, now he's like, wow, it's all very purposeful. Everything they do, there's a reason for it. And they're all extraordinarily thoughtful in that way. Then no wonder they look at everybody else as savages, because they have like, I don't know if you would call it just like they're wasteful with their money, but you have that in other societies. I'm sure there may be an example or two, but we don't get it in their world. But on the whole, they're all following sort of a similar code, and it shows in their homes. It shows in everything you just described.
I like that Vashet immediately, when he obviously brings it up to Vashet, and she's like, "What'd you think?" Vashet said, laughing at me, that a handful of us win our reds and run off to live lives of mad luxury while our families drink their own bathwater and die of scurvy. It's like, no, I thought you guys wouldn't even be able to afford bathwater. I thought you guys would drink your own piss, and that you were like literally eating your babies. That's the impression you give off. Just your personality. That's the impression you give off to me.
Yeah, well, and it seems like when he first met Tempe, he doesn't know what to think.
No.
Right? He's just like, they're very odd. This is very odd.
Yeah, like,
right?
Fucking smart ass. Like, what do you? I don't know anything about you. Like, so what do you mean? What did I think?
Yeah. Well, I like his response where he's just like, I hadn't really thought of it at all.
Yeah.
Like, not everybody, not the world doesn't revolve around you.
Like,
okay,
Vashet does not miss an opportunity to give the sarcastic response and to laugh at you for being ignorant.
Yeah, it's
like, yeah, I don't live here. I've hung out with you guys for like 5 minutes. I don't know shit about you. Clearly, I wouldn't have agreed to do all this shit had I known what y'all were about.
Yeah. I mean, that's it is pretty funny that she just runs at those opportunities, but it seems like, well, they're proud, right? The whole society's that way as well, except maybe Shehyn has more understanding and patience, I guess, while others are just like fucking outsider, which is funny because all the cultures are like that.
Yeah.
They're all like that. Nobody's fucking different.
But yeah, and then so it mentions also that Vashet had began to show him how to use the sword, which I like the way it's gonna come up here in a minute, but I like the way that they introduce like how he's progressing in his studies, because it's slow and it's not something that he's just picking up immediately and getting really good at things. Like he's starts at the basic levels, gets a little bit above basic, but he's not even really at the novice level when he leaves. He's just above the basic. He's like ready to become a novice.
I think this is a really, really great inclusion for those Mary Sue type individuals, because what gets emphasized in these chapters is what he's asking for a partner to fight. She's like, you're not ready for that. Like you don't know what the hell you're doing. He's like, but you said I'm advanced. Like what I'm able to do is impressive. She's like, it's impressive because you just started.
Yeah.
You don't know what you're doing. It's impressive that you've done as well as you have. That's a fucking great example of Kvothe. He's capable. When he focuses, he's very capable. We've seen that his entire life. We've seen this kid grow up.
It drives me nuts when people talk about like his fight skills as in the conversations with the Mary Sue arguments. It's like his fighting, really? Like that is the worst example you could bring up of all the stuff he practices. That's the worst example you could bring up, because he gets laid waste by a little girl. A little tiny girl kicks the shit out of him repeatedly. And at the end of it, he's like, all right, man, I was like 50-50 with that 12-year-old girl when I left.
Before
like,
this,
even if she's like the greatest fighting 12-year-old in the world, she's 12 years old and she's a little fucking tiny girl. Like little tiny girl or boy. If some 12-year-old was kicking the shit out of me, they better be like just unbelievably good at fighting, which Celine obviously is. But is she going out in the world and just like kicking the shit out of everybody? No, she's not. She's not even on Tempe's level. Tempe would beat her.
Outside of his use of sympathy, there's not there aren't examples of him whooping people's asses.
No, he gets in a fight. He fights those guys that were raping those two girls. He fights the fake Rue troop and he kills them with the sword. But in that fight, he gets stabbed almost right away. He gets stabbed, would have been a death blow, but his cloak saved his life. So I mean, the first time he gets in a fight after leaving the Adim, he almost gets killed. And the only reason he's still alive is because of his cloak. So that's not Tempe fighting. That's not happening to Tempe.
Yeah. Well, and even what I was also saying is like prior to going to, because he goes to the Adim and he obviously is going to learn things. Prior to that, he doesn't have any skills. He's got sympathy.
Yeah.
Right? He doesn't have any fighting skills.
No.
He's not adept with any of it.
No, he fought like when he fights Sim, or like goes to go at Sim, he like just starts like scratching and clawing.
Oh,
like
yeah,
when he gets scared and jumps up.
He does,
like,
he does like how he fought Pike.
Yeah.
You know, he was a kid.
It's like a feral cat
savage
trying to scratch you, like, and bite at you and shit. He's didn't come in here a fighter, and he left much more of a fighter, but still, like, at best, he was ready to become a novice for the Adim.
That's another one, man. Does a Mary Sue get raped? You know what I'm saying? Does a Mary Sue get like? Does he get like the shit kicked out of him when he's in Tarbine?
Yeah.
You know,
I mean,
like,
it's
ridiculous.
Usually the argument would be that like a stereotypical, like full on complete Mary Sue would have the skills to overcome anything that happens already. Like already had it. You don't have to go through the process of them learning them and becoming good at something. They're already good. You know, it's like, something comes up where you need to use sympathy. Oh yeah, well I already learned sympathy, 3 years ago from some guy taught me it. So now I know sympathy. Or if they need to know, geography, they'd study geography years ago. Whatever it is, they've already developed those skills. So whenever something comes up, they're already able to do it. So, if you're seeing Kvothe and he's having to learn everything that he becomes good at, and we see it, he goes through the process,
He learns how to play. He
Sometimes
learns.
spends years, like he gets really
Yeah.
good at music, but he spends years training at
Yeah,
it.
yeah. I was gonna say he learns how to play music, but he spent his entire childhood, and we already know he's above average skill level with what he focuses on.
Yeah.
So music, that comes. He has two parents that are musicians. I mean, come on, man. Like he's in the perfect place to excel at that. Sympathy, it does take a while. That would probably be the best example. If somebody, like, because you said this person brought up fighting, that's the worst example. If somebody, probably the best example would be Sympathy because how outstanding he is. But I mean, that's the thing. Most of the guys that go to the university didn't have Ben, right?
And he spent however long with Ben learning Sympathy, say a half a year, and then he spent like a year at the university learning Sympathy from the greatest, teacher you could have.
After
That's what he does for a living, is teach Sympathy.
And that's after he already had base understanding of Heart of Stone and all those other things that are so basic.
Well, that's what I'm saying. He spent 6 months training with Abenthy, and then he spent a year training with Oxydol. So he had like about a year and a half training total, with a long break between. But still, he had about a year and a half. Plus, he had that class with him, which was unbelievably influential for him. And him really laid the groundwork for everything he does in these books. But when he fights Devi, he loses. He loses, and so it's handedly. Like it's not. That's not what would happen with the Mary Sue. I mean, he would win that.
Well, and I guess to give again, if you don't appreciate nuance, someone could say, "Oh, but his entry exam. How's he do that?" Well, we know he cheats.
Yeah.
So like, what the fuck, man?
Yeah.
It's like there's holes in every time you want to try to bring it up. There's a bunch of holes you can stab in all of it. So
I mean, what he is really good at is whatever he focuses his mind on. If he has any kind of natural ability towards it, he becomes really good at it eventually. But it's not instant. It's not an instant thing, and a lot of times he becomes pretty good at stuff. Like he's got one invention under his belt. He's a very good
his ass off at that.
Sympathist in the school, but I mean, he's just like top of the school. We don't know how he would be against other arcanists. And so like we don't know how great of a sympathist he is. Like he's got basically kind of one name under his belt after two books.
A great example of like what happens with the Adim. He doesn't become an expert fighter. What he does with the tree shows he's becoming much more skilled at naming.
Yeah,
right? He's becoming a lot more skilled at seeing the name of the wind.
Yeah, it shows that if he keeps at something, he keeps getting better at it, and eventually he can become great at it. But it takes a long time for him to become great at something. It's not something where he just like starts studying shit for a couple of weeks. Like the best thing you could point to as far as stuff that he picks up quickly is his memory. Like if he needs to memorize something, he's fucking amazing at that.
Well, and that's because of his music background. I mean, that's how he uses it.
Yeah, or whatever it is. I mean, his memory is phenomenal. So that is otherworldly immediately. But that's still, I mean, like being really good at stuff is not what a Mary Sue is. So it's much more than that, and because there's so many characters that are really good at a lot of things.
That brings up a really good question that you asked on Twitter, which was, would Kvothe learn the name of the wind without knowing sympathy, without having been taught sympathy?
Yeah.
Wasn't that the question?
Yeah.
Which, to me, the answer would be yes, because he falls into it under duress.
Yeah.
Right? So it seems like it was in him.
Yeah.
That's the lineage type thing that we've talked about many times.
What I think the sympathy helps at is, I think, like learning the Alar and learning how to split your mind. I think like those are extremely valuable tools for getting your mind to be able to access the sleeping mind, to see things that should be impossible. Like you have to believe you can do something before you can do it, almost type of thing. Mm-hmm. And so, like, in a perfect example is, no one ran under a 4-minute mile. Finally, someone did it, and then
Bannister.
the flood waves opened up, and bunches of people started being able to do it. So there's that part of you that until you see someone do something, you can't do it. But assuming, so like the alar and the sympathy, it helps kind of break down those barriers of like the impossible is now possible. Like you're making shit lift that you're making a coin lift that you're not even touching. Things like that would open your mind up. But
yeah,
like Heart of Stone, opened him up in the sense that I think it opened him towards the idea of spinning leaf. But I don't think Heart of Stone helps as far as naming's concerned. But the thing I would point to, the reason I think he would have learned it, even if Aventhy had never taught him sympathy and he never went to the university, is after what happened to his parents when he started playing in the woods, I think he was naming during that time.
Yeah.
I think there's something about his music that there's something towards him and Tamerlane, or like his lineage down to Ajax. If that's the case, if he has lineage to like someone like a Tamerlane or an Ajax, but I think there's something about him that it's just inside of him that he was he's the prototype of he's just like one of the Ruach type of people who is just more inclined towards that kind of ability. It's more inclined towards naming.
Do you think also that going behind the doors of forgetting, because you're closing off a portion of your mind, the rest of your mind is more, it's more accessible. It's like sleeping mind in the sense that you're allowing yourself to, he's allowing himself to go in that direction and to fully like do magic with his music because he's not distracted with, he's like in a zone state, right?
Yeah, I would think of it like the way I kind of imagine it is when he was playing in the woods, it was when you have him, when he calls the name of Florian and the name of the wind with her, the world, like he looks at the world and he sees it in a different way. He sees it down to like its core, like he's seeing things that he never saw before, and he's understanding the world in a way that he's never understood it before, and he knows that as he's doing it. So like in the woods though,
he has complete control of everything.
Yeah, and in the woods though, like because of he's going through that shock and that trauma of his parents getting murdered, and he's closed himself off. I think it's a more muted version of the sleeping mind, where the sleeping mind's kind of taking control, but he's like shut his mind off to thoughts, so he's not thinking about what he's doing. He's just doing it. And so like I think the sleeping mind took control, but in a more muted way, where he's not thinking about what he's doing or trying to analyze it or looking around and viewing the world with these new eyes. I think it's a more muted version of it.
That's a really cool way to build into his character that ability, because it's building the muscle memory.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like, because he's going through that experience. Therefore, one would think he's more adept, right? That's why spinning leaf comes out of that, right?
Yeah.
So like that he builds that muscle memory that then gets shut down once he goes to Tarbine and all of it's gone.
Yeah,
which is pretty wild.
You have when he's calling the name of the wind with Valerian, like we've talked about in those episodes, there's so much that calls back to his time playing in the woods and his time in Tarbine when he's that feral child. Like so much of as he's doing it, he's looking back to that. It's
all those
pointing you at those moments, and I don't think that's an accident. I think that's your signal is that he's accessing what he accessed as a kid, that he's only accessed once since he's been been woken back up with when he called the name of the wind against Ambrose. But he's not thinking about this time with Ambrose and how angry he was. He's thinking about the time when I think the sleeping mind was more awake and in control for a long period of time.
That's a really cool point to bring up, because that is what happens. That again, that's how great Rothfuss is, man. He makes these connections that are there to pick up if you're willing to pick them up.
Yeah.
So it's all built, man. It's all there. This is like, we've gone into very great depth and detail over many episodes of how Mary Sue. It's just it doesn't hold up, man. And Rothfuss did a tremendous job of building all of these factors of why he can accomplish what he can accomplish. It's not like he just goes into the Fae and it's his home and now he's running shit.
Yeah,
because when he loses that ability, it's fucking tremendously impactful in a negative way, a hugely negative way.
Yeah, it's Rothfuss is a beast, man. He's
which really actually to think
takes it to another level on
to also consider
things.
that, and this probably doesn't have a lot of content to talk about, but when he loses it, and then Florian basically has to take care of him and doesn't know how to take care of somebody. I mean, he's in that sorrowful state where he's just basically like vegging out for a while. I mean, to a degree, that's Coat, right? To some degree, because he's lost all those abilities he once had, right? It's not as big a drop. It almost feels like when that happens with Florian, it's like he had this massive shot of serotonin and everything else. And you know how afterwards your come down is vicious. I think he had the most vicious, drug hangover of all time or something. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I mean, because it's rough with that aspect because that section is because it seemed like he was just like comatose almost. Like it's more what it seems like is when he called the name of the Wind versus Ambrose, and then
he was spinning.
It kind of had him in this
like a trance
comatose state. Yeah, like a trance. Like it's a similar type of thing there. It seems like something like a trance, but it's more emotionally
that's interesting,
just disturbing rather than like his sleeping mind had taken control. It was like whatever the Kvothe did to him just kind of broke his ability to kind of function for a while.
Yeah, that's right, because he was catatonic, and Kilvin had to like snap him out, or Loden had to snap him out, right? Yeah, that was a really cool like thing to be in as a reader, where you're kind of like envisioning that.
And someone brought that up too. That as far as like when I asked whether Kvothe would have been able to call the name of the Wind if he'd never learned sympathy, and he was like, "Well, if he did, he would have been lost to the world. He would have went into a coma, become comatose and catatonic, and it's like maybe for a period of time, but would have that lasted forever? Like, I mean." Because if that just happens when you call the name for the first time, if you need a Loden to check you out, well, how did a Loden get his shit back together when you called the name of the Wind? How did Kilvin or Eltzadal or any of these guys that did it before Loden ever called a name? And so, like, there has to be a sense that you eventually have to come out of that, because otherwise, like, the first person who ever called the name of the Wind would have been gone.
Well, I guess to a degree that's why there's a bunch of people in Haven. I mean, there's other reasons. I don't think
that's what that's what I'm saying. I don't think that's exactly. I think there's something to that. I think there's something that breaks, but I don't think that's what happened to Kvothe, because otherwise, Loden could just go do the same thing to them and bring them out of it.
Yeah,
and so I think there is a sense that that's part of the danger. It's like when you call it, it does something to you. But I don't think that's why they're broken. I think something more serious happened with them. Their minds were just completely unable to cope with something. And in Kvothe, I think he was able to cope with it. I think it just would have took a moment for his mind to kind of calm down and reset.
Well, everyone's mind's different.
Yeah.
Right. So there's also that. I mean, there's so many ways you could go around this to speculate on what has people in Haven. The guy that was like, they're in me, all that type of stuff. I mean, yeah, it's which is cool. It's cool. Like, we didn't go down a list of like, here's what happened to this
guy. That guy just has bed bugs, and they don't know what to look for.
He's he was a drug addict.
He's got bed bugs and lice. He's got terrible case of lice and bed bugs, and it's
They don't have the
brutal.
technology. They don't have the technology to understand bed bugs and lice.
They just
They
think,
don't know what
like,
ringworm
look, he's a
is.
dirty person, but who cares? Why would that have anything to do with anything? He's like, no, you don't understand. I've had it my whole life. These bugs are in me.
So they're just, he has a tapeworm and they're ignoring that.
Yeah.
They're saying he's nuts. He's literally like, that's so ridiculous.
His head itches, man. Just get a brush and comb that shit out of his hair.
They're just unwilling to do it.
Yeah, they don't. He needs a bath very badly. Fucking jerks, man. But yeah, and then so Vashet, she goes to him. She's like, look at the land around you. She said, spinning in a slow circle to take in the landscape. The ground is too thin for the plow, too jagged for horses. The summer too wet for wheat, too harsh for fruit. Some mountain hold iron or coal or gold, but not these mountains. In winter, the snow will pile higher than your head. In spring, the storms will push you from your feet. So why the fuck are you living there? Why would you choose this place? Now, she goes into a story to try to explain it. And she's like, this is our land because no one else wants it, or rather it became ours for that reason. She had adjusted her sword at her shoulder, then eyed me speculatively. Sit and listen, and I will tell you a story of a time long, long gone. She's like, long ago, the Adem were upheaved from our rightful place. And she goes through, she's like, something we can't remember drove us out, and something stole their land, ruined, or made them flee in fear. They don't really know what caused them to leave, but they were forced to leave for whatever reason. And then they started wandering and became a nomadic people. And then wherever they would stop, people would not like them being in their spot, kind of like the Ademaru. And so they would have to flee those places. And so they kept running. But she's like, our whole nation mendicant, like beggars, we would find a place and settle and rest our flocks. Then those who lived nearby would drive us off. So I think what happened is she's talking about the creation war upheaved them from their homes, and then they started wandering the lands afterward, and it took them a long time to find a place to live. But I think that they were at the time Ruach, and they hadn't, fully become humans. And so I think what happened is that they eventually settled in Heret, not just because it was a place that would be hard to live, that people wouldn't, look for them to kick them out of there, to drive them out of that land, but also because, the waystone's there, the tree is there, the wind is there, the edge is there. Like, I think that is part of what settled them down there, is that Ruach side of them understanding those kind of things better than their current generation does. And they settled there for a purpose, not just, this is a place. No, this place sucks so bad, no one will want to fucking come after us here.
It feels like a combination to me of they fled, they were roaming, and then they stumbled upon, holy shit, it fit everything.
Yeah.
Because of everything you just mentioned.
Yeah.
I think there is something to the wind. There's something to their accessing a naming quality with their fighting. There's something that's helping them do otherworldly things with their bodies.
Yeah. Yeah, because I think they when they looked at that place, they were probably like, it's gonna be a hard life, and so that's gonna deter people from coming here. But there's benefit to living here for XYZ reasons. Like, so
I think that's
they saw it as like a hidden gem, like something that people would not recognize why this is a great place to live.
Well, so I think that's what initially pushes them there, but what keeps them is what you said: the tree, the Greystones, and then everything else. And this is after Eighth and Wraith, right?
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah. Because I mean, why wouldn't they leave if they have money now?
Well, now they can.
Like, if it sucks so bad,
now they can defend themselves.
Leave? Yeah.
Well, they can all. Yeah. So it's not like they don't have a reason now. I mean, that's the biggest.
They can defend themselves. Who's going to go and invade the Adem?
Yeah.
Like, I mean, if you do, it's probably going to blow up in your face.
Yeah. Yeah, it definitely seems the case. That's for sure.
But yeah, and then so she says, but this land had little to give us, a place for our flocks to graze, stone, and endless wind. We could not find a way to sell the wind. We sold our fierceness to the world. So we lived and slowly sharpened ourselves into the thing we are today, no longer only fierce, but dangerous and proud, unceasing as the wind and strong as stone. And so I think that's, she talks about like, he says, I'm fond of stories. And she says, a story is like a nut. A fool will swallow it whole and choke. A fool will throw it away, thinking it of little worth. She smiled, but a wise man finds a way to crack the shell and eat the meat inside. And I think the meat inside is that they fled. The big event is probably the creation war. They started traveling from there because all the main cities had been destroyed. So it was a fucking hellscape on the land during that time. And so people would be untrusting of strangers in that kind of environment where they just lived through mass exterminations and mass wars. All the cities were destroyed. So people would be giving you the stink eye if you're traveling the lands, and they don't know who you are. They wouldn't want you around. So you're getting run off everywhere. Then they pick this city because of the hidden benefits that people just are unaware of. That you would have to be someone attuned with like naming and that kind of stuff to be able to appreciate what you got in that environment.
Yeah, and it seems like I get the impression that it's essential to what they're able to accomplish, and then they build that ability and then can take it out in the world.
Yeah.
That's what I get, that impression. But it's cool. I mean, the way the whole story is laid out and everything. And it does build that. I mean, what you said, like the meat inside, it's telling us to dig deeper,
Yeah, and also it's how Rothfuss writes his story. I mean, it's very much a description of what he does with his story. There's so many pieces that on the surface seem like meaningless little rhymes or things like that, or just like little lines that look like throwaway lines, but then once you analyze them, you dig a little deeper, there's something more there. Now, some people take that and they go in a wild direction. Like I just saw a theory that Kvothe is a time traveler, and this story is happening over thousands of years. And that, Kvothe is all of like this is all the stories, the creation war and all this stuff is just different points in his life.
Different points of his life over thousands of years?
Yeah. I don't think it works. I don't think you could put the story together. Like there would be big problems, like because he's talking about like there's thousands of years gaps between the time when his family was killed versus when he's with the mayor. But the Maelowin is talking about his mom. And so, like, how would he meet?
Yeah,
Maelowin would be talking about an ancestor from thousands of years ago. And so, like, there's different theories that he had that if you start putting them all the pieces together, it's like, well, that theory would contradict this theory and, those kind of things. But then he was wiping it away with, like, well, the timeline, it would be hard to kind of figure out because sometimes he's going forward, sometimes he's going backwards. And as it just doesn't work as narratively.
Yeah, those
there's a time traveling element added in book 3.
Yeah, you can't really. It's problematic to ignore your contradictions,
but
when you're trying to build a theory.
That's where, I mean, and kind of wave them away is like, it's hard to figure it out.
You can do a lot with speculating on, well, what is the Fae and does he time travel with that? I mean, it kind of builds that feeling into it. It kind of makes you, but
that's not really time traveling. That is just like there's two dimensions where time moves differently, but Kvothe is aging in both of them, or at least
the biggest problem is we have eyewitnesses with Martin and Dedan. So that's
But regardless, I mean, you'll see theories that get pretty wild and pretty out there, and
like you said though, that
and Rothfuss, it's because of the way he writes he encourages you to look deeper, and so sometimes you can go down super deep rabbit holes that it starts getting pretty crazy, where it's like, man, that's what he's doing. He's got a lot of fucking work to do in book 3. Like, he's not set that up at all for anybody other than maybe like one reader. Like he's not set that up where anybody's like, if he did that, people would be like, what the fuck? And so he would have to backtrack and explain all that shit in detail, because just the clues alone, like he's not writing this for like the appreciation of 0.001% of his audience. If they get to the punchline and they're completely confused and don't know where it came from, then that's not going to be a story that lives through the times.
Yeah, he didn't stick the landing.
No.
If that's the case. I mean, how great is it, though, that, I mean, the writing is so great that you have things like this.
Yeah.
It's fucking awesome. I mean, how many books? I don't have a lot of books that I've read where there's this level of speculation possible.
No.
You know, he left so many things and he hinted so many things that and like you said, with his writing, because there's more and it's telling you there's more, well, eventually that makes people spend like crazy. And they want to do all kinds of crazy things to say, well, this is what, they're all dead. Everybody's dead.
Yeah, I mean, and you get that people are, at some point, they're just trying to come up with something new and different. They want an original theory. And so, that's where you get, like, I try to, when I'm going through theories, I really try to make sure, like, when I'm thinking about it, it's like, would this work? Like, how would he tell this to the reader who's not like me, who doesn't look through all the clues, who just read the books, and someone who just reads straight through, like Malouin explaining the Natalia Lackless theory? He can easily explain that to the layman, where they're going to be like, oh shit, I missed that. But they're not going to be like, I don't know what the fuck he's talking about. Like, that doesn't make any sense to me. And so, like, you got to be careful with the theories that if he did that in the book, is this going to be something that anybody's going to understand? Or are they going to be like, what? I don't get, where did he come up with that? Like, I don't understand what happened. It just seems so out of left field. If it comes out of left field and people feel it's out of left field, they're going to, it's not going to be, it's not likely that's what Rothfuss did. He wouldn't take this kind of time and do that.
I don't believe he would. Also, just given the fact that the connections that can be made, they are the type of thing where it's like, oh shit, how did I miss that? Or
see, like the way I look at it, a lot of times the way he does it is like I could see where he has Roderick killed off, and there's not going to be any specific way he does it. But like when he does it, that's not going to shock anybody because he's already said there's going to be a king that's killed. Where the careful reader gets the benefit of it is they can look through and they can see all the foreshadowing, all the little hints, the subtle hints about the Calanthus and all those kind of things that laid the groundwork for him killing Roderick Calanthus. So like the casual reader is not going to pick it up, and they don't need to pick it up. The careful reader is going to pick that up, and it's going to give them an added benefit for rereading and paying close attention. They get more out of that little nugget, but it's not necessary for the casual reader. And I think that's kind of why, like a theory like that, you could see where it works with the casual reader and with the close reader. And it's the casual reader doesn't need it. The close reader is getting a benefit.
The casual reader is still getting a benefit because
of a great story.
Yeah, well, and they know, oh shit, that thing I missed. It's great.
Well, the casual reader's not going to even remember any line about the Calanthus or the colors.
Not that necessarily.
Yeah.
But drawing off of something that's foreshadowed, it's in the back of your mind. It's there. That's why a lot of times when you bring these things up, I'm like, oh shit, yeah, that does make sense.
Yeah.
And those things do connect. Like you said, if Rothfuss can just explain it to you, or someone else who's read the books can just explain it, and you've read the books, you understand them well enough that you can make those connections in your mind to make them plausible, well, that's very careful writing. And that's what 100% I'm confident that's what he's doing. That's what
what it will do is, like any casual reader who wants to go back and through, and they already know the answers by the end of the series, when they go back through, then they will see all the groundwork that he laid. Mm-hmm. The difficult part is trying to predict where the groundwork that he's laid, where it's going to go. That's what's difficult. But once you have the books out and you already know where it went, then you can go back through and do a reread for like a casual reader, and they'll pick up all the clues, because they already know the answers. The hard part is doing what we're doing right now, is trying to predict where it's going to go without the book.
Well,
that's where, like, most casual readers are not trying to do that. If they're getting it at all, it's because they're listening to stuff like this or reading Reddit online or things like that, trying to get that kind of information.
Well, as difficult as it is, it's very clear in the subtext that Denna does moonlight at Jack in the Box.
Yes.
It's very clear that Kilvin has a hot yoga class.
100%. Slam Jam poetry, that's obvious. The boy band, obvious. Yeah. Mario Brothers series, obvious. All the stuff with Kvothe and Vashet, obvious to us.
Okay.
Casual reader hasn't picked up on any of it, though. Yeah, and that's fine. They still enjoy the book, even though they don't know all these great things that we know.
I love you keep saying obvious, like obvious.
Yeah.
The Kvothe and Vashet stuff, it's there. It's in the subtext. It's being emphasized. You just have to dig, man. Just got to dig. It's under there.
Yeah. And then you got, crazy time traveling stories that just don't align with our theories, like Kvothe and Vashet and Kvothe are doing a Lone Ranger and Tonto thing.
Yeah.
Like, how does that even fit? Like, how would your time travel theory fit with our Kvothe and Vashet as the Lone Ranger theory?
Yeah, that's a good way to test any theories. If they don't align with ours, they don't work. Period. Boom.
Now, if you want to kind of mix in maybe an element, like maybe that the first Jack in the Box came from time travel, and like someone went into the future in a land far, far away, and they discovered Del Taco and Jack in the Box and Taco Bell, and that's why there's fast food chains in the Fae. Like, okay, yeah, granted, that's very plausible.
As long as it says far, far away, then
I'm far, far away. Buying. Yeah, you put that in there, and it makes sense no matter what.
That solves it all.
But yeah, and then so after she tells him that story, he goes, I got to my feet and walked to where she was sitting. I kissed her hand and her forehead and her mouth. Vashet, I said, I'm glad Shehyn gave me to you. You are a foolish boy. She looked down, but I could see a faint blush rising on her face as she spoke. Come, we should go. You do not want to miss the chance to see Shehyn fight. And I love this little section here where you get some pretty cool descriptions of their fighting.
Dude, it's dope.
Analyzing it, and yeah, it's written in a really cool way. And I think this is like some of the scenes that you could do in a really cool way on TV. I think these would play out very well.
Yeah, it's one of those things where, I don't think I don't know if there are human beings that are able to do what they're describing. I guess if you use choreography to such a degree, but it has to look not otherworldly. It has to look perfect. It has to look like what Shehyn's doing is perfect, while what Penthe's doing is absolutely absurd, like not physically possible. Like, you have to be the best gymnast in the history of the world, basically, to be able to pull it off. And it reads amazing.
Yeah, and if you nail it down too much, like, without explaining it by the magic, if you're just like comparing it to our world, it's not possible with what they're doing. Yeah. And like the system, it just doesn't make any sense that two women who are like 5'4", 5'2", 5'6", 120 pounds, maybe in that range, somewhere in that range, that they're going to be two of the greatest fighters in the world. No, that's not happening. Like, even if you take Mayweather, and who's arguably the greatest boxer ever, he's definitely, a top tier boxer in the history of boxing. If you put him in the ring against low level heavyweights, he's not beating them. He's going to try to survive against them, because if he gets hit once, he's going down, and he's not knocking those guys out. Or if you take the lower weight UFC fighters and you put them in the heavyweight category, they're getting annihilated. They're just not big enough. There's weight classes for a reason. Like, that's not That's not done arbitrarily. It's because you can go up, like, you could see a guy go up a few weight classes, get bigger, put on some weight and get a little bigger and go up a few weight classes. But like a Manny Pacquiao who went up 8 weight classes, he still had a limit. He's not going up against the heavyweights. He was never going to be big enough to go up against heavyweights.
It seems a lot of the justification is pinned on the women's ability to be patient and not let themselves be run by their anger.
Yeah. But that doesn't explain why they can move the way they move and they can fight, and why they would be able to beat people who are twice their size that are professional fighters, or just, men that got 60, 70 pounds on them and 6 inches on them. Like that doesn't make sense why a trained fighter, like a man that it goes through the same training than them, but is way bigger than them, way stronger, faster, all that stuff, why he would be a worse fighter does not make any sense in the sense of our world. Things are different with them biologically. Okay, that makes sense. If it's a magic system, okay, you can make sense of that too. But if it's just, this is what Rothfuss thinks is possible in our world, then no, it doesn't make any sense at all. It wouldn't happen.
The way it would have to be is you can't hit her. So there's that. You're just not able to because she's so evasive. That's what made Mayweather so good at defense, right?
Mm-hmm.
But the other thing would have to be her her strikes are so perfect that the fact that she's so small doesn't matter because she's packing such a wallop.
Yeah,
there's that, or it's also the leverage. She's breaking your wrist.
Yeah,
she's breaking your forearm. Like she's perfectly moving to debilitate you.
Yeah,
how else does this work?
You can come up with anomalies. There could be an anomaly, situation where just someone's just way different. Doesn't make any sense why they're as good as they are at what they're good at. Like they're just an anomaly. They exist. Manny Pacquiao's an anomaly. You don't see boxers his size go up, 8, 9 classes and just dropping fools in every class. It just, he's a one of a kind.
Mm-hmm.
But regardless, that would explain an anomaly. It doesn't explain a generalization where generally the women are better fighters, and generally like these smaller fighters are some of the best fighters in the world, like where there's a bunch of them, multiples of them that are elite of the elite, but they're super small and tiny. No, that doesn't make any sense. That's not realistic unless there's something magical going on or there's something different about them.
Yeah.
It can't just be really like training, because there's other people who do the same training that are bigger than Penthe and Shehyn and these, some of these smaller people. They go through the training too. So why wouldn't the biggest and the strongest, there would still be a weight class system with the ADEM. You wouldn't, like they go, like they have a skill based system, but there would also have to be a weight based system with them as well. They're still punching and throwing and kicking and fighting. Like with swords, maybe not. But hand-to-hand combat, yeah, you're definitely going to have weight classes. That's just part of fighting.
With weapons, yes, it gets equalized, but I mean, they even talk about it with Penthe and Shehyn, where it's like, well, she's old.
Yeah.
She can't be expected to keep up. Well, okay, so there are limitations, is what we're saying here. So these big dudes, like, they're just oafs?
Yeah.
Every guy's an oaf? Is that what we're saying? Like,
even still, like, the heavyweights look like oafs compared to the featherweights, but featherweights don't challenge them. Like, they don't fight them.
They may be oafs, but they're strong as shit. Yeah, exactly. So, yeah, it's problematic. That's for sure. But I mean, we get pictures of it with Tempe fighting guys at the bar, and just that ability to.
To kind of put it in perspective, think of a 5'4", 120-pound man, the strongest, the best 5'4", 120-pound man in the world at fighting, at whatever. He's the best at every fighting. Put him in the ring against Tyson Fury, who is 6'9", 250 pounds, and with one of the most ridiculous reaches in the history of of arm length. I mean, his reach is absurd. It's something like 80 inches. He's got a ridiculous arm reach. Like that guy fighting someone, the best 5'4", 120-pound fighter in the world, is annihilating that person.
Yeah.
First time he hits him, it's over.
Yeah. I thought originally you were going to say Tyson in his prime even, but yeah.
Tyson Fury.
Yeah.
Fury.
No, I know. I was originally
thinking.
I was originally thinking Mike Tyson in his prime. The how fast he could move, how he fought inside with people. How would someone that's smaller than him survive?
Yeah,
it's 120 pounds, like you said, like you described. Let's see how it's possible, right? You can use your imagination and say, oh, they have all these things they can do with their legs and blah blah blah. But yeah, it's not like you said. The problem is the generalization is the problem because. And that's what he's doing because he's saying women generally in their world. And I don't know how big the population is. But...
Like he gives an out at first, but then he takes the out away. Like because at first she's like, "We're better fighters," but she says it in a way where you could interpret it as she means we know when to pick our fights. Men, men got more testosterone fueled, desires inside of them where they are quicker to anger, quicker to fight, quicker to lose their temper. So women, you could say that she's saying women are in better control of their anger and their animosity and those kind of things. So they're less likely to fly off the handle. Which I mean, you could look at bar fights. It's almost all men that are fighting in bars. Yeah, some girls will fight in bars, but that's a rare thing. Usually, if a fight breaks out in a bar, it's men.
And so that's also choosing to fight, but also within the fight, you can envision that as these guys are sloppier, and we get that with the example of the two.
Yeah, once you go down that route, then it doesn't make any sense because in general, the men are going to be better because like the ADEM men should still be better than the ADEM women if they're getting the same training. So you can't just go like the sloppiness route because there's men and women of the same group that are getting the same training. So that doesn't work, but you could say it as like, the men are not fighting within the Lethani. So if you're not fighting in the Lethani, you don't win. So you could go the mental gymnastics of that. But then we see the top tier fighters and like Penthe and Shehyn are, supposedly way above Tempe, which wouldn't make any sense. And way above, way above all the other men. Like that doesn't make any sense. How are these like your two best fighters and they're they're short and they're skinny and they're just they're not going to be the best hand-to-hand combat fighters in the world. It's just not going to happen.
Yeah, I mean unless what we're judging on is like fencing, it's like contact, contact alone, then that's different. But if it's winning a fight on the ability to knock somebody out and to overpower them because part of a fight is overpowering the other individual, then it doesn't. The math doesn't add up.
Power is important, and you're not even on the same level when you're small and little.
Yeah. I mean, you don't have the reach, right?
You can't put the same strength behind your punches. Mm-hmm. So I mean, that's the history of fighting. We've seen this the entire human history. This has been the case. This isn't like just not talking out of my ass. I mean, this is all cultures, there's a reason we have weight classes, and there's a reason men don't fight women, and it's not fair. So it's just one of those things where that would be the case. So again, I definitely think that there is something magical going on because you see it too. It's like when we'll get to it. But some of the moves Penthe does and stuff like that, where it's like that's not humanly possible. Like that's something different is going on. They're reaching for something that is completely different. Her and Shehyn. But so we get more on their culture when they get there though, because he says a crowd slowly gathered. Only 30 people or so, but it was the most ADEM I'd ever seen other than them in the dining hall. They gathered in twos and threes, moving from one conversation to another. Rarely did a group of 5 coalesce for any length of time. So you get more on their culture. And then he talks about like with all these conversations, he couldn't hear more than a murmur. I mean, getting like they don't hang out in packs. They're very singular in their conversation. They devote, when they're talking to someone, they're keeping their attention with that single person. They don't talk loudly. They keep everything to themselves. But then he also started to see, he's seen the subtleties of their conversation, in that it's not what you think is like they're just like quiet, fidgety people. He could tell like one was a teacher explaining something to a student, and another was a couple that was fighting. A man and a woman were fighting, and she was angry. He was trying to explain. He's like, I suddenly wondered how I ever thought of these people as restless or fidgety. Every motion was to a purpose. Every shifting of the feet implied a change in attitude. Every gesture spoke volumes. And I love that aspect of how much and you really get it in this chapter, how much different and more nuanced he's finding these people to be the more time he spends with them.
Yeah, it's becoming abundantly clear. And that phrase that was so great where he says, couldn't this lead to confusion? And she says, what does she say? He said, no, it leads to thoughtfulness, right? So like how they stand, how close they stand, the pauses of when they speak, the hand gesture, all of it is with purpose, and all of it has its own nuance and suggestion. So it's like they talk about not mincing words, man. They put thought into everything they do.
Yeah.
And it's a lot of clarification, man. Like, I mean, I wish I could think of an example that comes to mind, but whenever they speak and then use the hand gestures, it's showing formal apology or whatever, right? So it's setting the nuance to what is being communicated. So it's really the articulation is on a whole nother level compared to any communication. I mean, other than writing, I mean, when you're able to write, you're able to articulate to the best possible degree. There's all types of room for confusion when you do shorthand, like a text message, or if you're just speaking, there's room for confusion if you're not taking into account all of the other, how someone says something, what's the context. Well, with the hand gestures, you're able to clarify to a great degree.
One of the cool things too is that like the more he learns about them, like this is an example where it humanizes the ADEM, because they are different in a lot of ways. But then he's also like, look, I'm looking at them, and while they look like they're talking not in a crowd, very quietly, they would look, you would think that they're fidgety or whatever. But then he's like, you have a couple that's arguing, you have a student and a teacher explaining things to each other. He humanizes them as well. It's like, and you get the humanization of the ADEM with the different personalities, like Shehyn and Kvothe and Vashet and Shehyn and Penthe. These are all different personalities. All these women have different personalities. All of them have different personalities from Tempe. They have culturally, they have a lot of similarities, but personalities are very different. But they're just because their culture is different, he also is able to humanize them and to make them relatable in a lot of ways too, so that it doesn't, pull you away where you're just like in some completely foreign society that doesn't have anything to do with what you know to be as a person.
It's a great, very important thing for a writer to do as well, is because before this they're the others, right? They're all just the others. They're the massless others, or the mass of faceless others, until now you're seeing the differences, and now we see the differences in the individuals and how different they are as individuals. So yes, they carry the common trait of being the ADEM and what that means, but yeah, they have their own personalities. They're vastly different. So they're not the others anymore. Now they're, like you said, humanized. Now they're individuals, which, I mean, talk about building out the world. Now we have a great appreciation. And that's a really good point as well, because having a couple that's fighting, well, that happens everywhere, right?
Yeah.
Teacher and student, that happens everywhere. So that these dynamics exist in their world just like they do in everywhere else. It's just they communicate differently.
Yeah. Yeah. And then you get that she starts explaining their system as far as what they're doing with their money when they're going out in the world as mercenaries. So they have deals with the Sildish moneylenders, where no matter where they are, you can always find a Sildish moneylender. They're the bankers of the world. It seems like they've got an ironclad grip on the banking industry, the Sealdish. And so they got accounts set up with these Sealdish banks where if anywhere they are in the world, they can deposit that money with a Sealdish bank, and then the ADIM are able to access that, from a bank that's closer to them. They would be able to access that and get paid. So it's a kind of an old school system, and they're not transmitting this data to each other over phone or over the computer. You're having to probably travel with ledgers and that kind of stuff to be able to update the ledger books so that they know when new money is coming in. But eventually it would get to banks that are closer to them that would they would be able to access, which is also kind of interesting when you think about like what would the process be if you got to bring a ledger book from one bank to another. Like you would probably want to keep that secret, like, and if you're moving money, I'm curious what their process is for traveling all over the world with money from bank to bank. The Sealdish must just have a ton of guards and shit at all times for these banks.
Yeah,
they got like the Brinks system of this world.
Well, because with chapter 2, right, Chronicler getting busted on the road. Can't have that happen to all these money lenders. How would the system hold up?
No.
So I wonder if it's. I almost feel
mean,
like
some
it's
loss
like
would be built into you would build that into your risk assessment. You would assume that there's going to be slippage and there's going to be loss, but you'd have to account for that with the rates that when you're lending the money out. But yeah, you would have to.
Yeah, but you can't have them getting busted everywhere. So
yeah, exactly. You would still have to have a good system. You would want to limit that as much as you possibly could. Would be impossible to completely eliminate it, but
if you're not doing a good enough job, you're not going to keep a stranglehold on the banking system. Someone else is going to.
So I would be curious to know what their system would be, because you would think it would have to be pretty gangster. They would have to be pretty fucking gangster with it, because otherwise you'd risk people on the inside letting themselves getting robbed, and making deals like that. So it'd be curious what the system. He could probably write that's the cool thing with these worlds is it's a massive world. It's just like our world, except for there's magic and stuff. And so you could write all kinds of different stories, genre stories. You could have big heist stories and things like that. The freedom you would have when you create a world like that to write whatever kind of story you want would be immense.
What if this is what the Chandrian's doing? Maybe Haliax is the head Sealdish. He heads the whole agency, and that's what he's doing.
Oh, and so Lorien was singing a song about them robbing banks.
Yeah.
So that's why that song was the wrong sort of song. You're gonna fucking stool on us, you fucking stool pigeon, singing the wrong sort of song. Why don't you keep your mouth shut?
Well, I'm saying they're the they're the security moving money. That's their contract.
And they got to keep that secret.
Yeah, they got to keep it secret, man. If people knew, they'd be coming after the Chandrian. This is a very good ad campaign because people fear them.
Well, wouldn't when you go to try to rob the Chandrian, that seems like a bad idea.
Exactly.
If they can kill you for talking about them, they could kill you for trying to rob them too.
Exactly. That's why it's safe.
I think it's more likely that they are robbing the banks and they're trying to keep that under wraps. That it's them doing it. That makes more sense, because why would they need they're already scary. Everybody's scared shitless of them. That you would want to advertise, hey, the people you're scared shitless of, yeah, we're the ones guarding this shit. And that would prevent anybody from coming near it.
Or tinkers in disguise. Or they're disguised as tinkers and nobody fucks with tinkers, so they're able to move the cash, move the ledgers around.
Yeah, that would be a good way to move your money, actually, is just give it to a tinker. They could if everybody's scared to rob them, they'd be a good one to put in charge of the money. But yeah, so that's how they're getting their money across. They're just dropping it off at banks and being able to pick it up. And then he's like, how much does a mercenary send back to the school? I asked, curious. 80%, she said. He's like, 80? You mean 8? She's like, no, 80. And so like her position on it, it's like, it's not that much because you got all the training we give you, your sword, all the food and all the lodging and all this kind of stuff. We're taking care of all your expenses while we're training you to be a badass mercenary. And so
They're
that,
basically giving you your life. I mean,
yeah,
that's what it is. Yeah. That's still a lot. I mean, shit. And
yeah,
all you're doing is
it
supporting
is.
the
Yeah,
their culture.
it wouldn't work if there wasn't this family loyalty system that they have where like Tempe, the idea, like, because Tempe, if he was cut away from the ADEM, it's not like he's going to be hurting for money. This dude's a badass mercenary. He could go and get jobs as a mercenary and get paid and be top of the line. He could go and be the mayor's Dagon.
Yeah.
So I mean, he's not going to be a guy that would struggle to find a job, but his fear is losing his family and his life there. He doesn't want to be cut away from all these people. So there's a big family atmosphere to their society.
But and also consider if they look at everybody else as savages and the way they communicate, and they have all of these things that make them who they are, that would breed that type of feeling. That type of feeling that they are exceptional, and because they're exceptional, they don't want to live like anybody else. You know?
Yeah.
If they're looking at down upon every other culture, because no, it doesn't seem like any other culture lives this way. So that separation, that complete, differential within how they live and how they look at the world and the Lithani and all that stuff, that does breed very much that loyalty as well. You'd have it inside, like it's
and with the fact that the nobody sees themselves as a dad, like, I mean, that would, only way that's functioning is if you got extreme loyalty from everybody, that they're all tied together as like one big family. Because if like the men just feel completely isolated and they're not part of any kind of family, that's going to be a barbaric society. I could tell. I mean, if you get a bunch of men together that don't feel they have any kind of responsibility and they don't have any kind of family and they don't have anything, you have a fucking dangerous society, because men can be very fucking dangerous if they feel isolated and alone and desperate and like they don't feel like any sense of community. That's a dangerous man. You got to be careful in that kind of shit. So just that system of having, we don't have man mothers. Like, if you didn't have a strong sense of community, you would have a very big problem on your hands with the men.
A bunch of clan warfare.
Yeah.
Get violent as shit.
Yeah, it'd be a barbaric society. Real barbaric. Not just the Kvothe. He's a barbarian. Be much more barbaric than that. But yeah, and then, she's like, knowing this, perhaps you can begin to understand what you have stolen. Not just a secret, but the major export of the ADEM. You have stolen the key to this entire town's survival. And he's like, it was a sobering thought. Suddenly, Case Red's anger made much better sense. Not really. I mean, to an extent, but not really.
This was going to be my point if you didn't bring it up. My question was going to be, did he really, though? I mean, did he steal their fierceness? No.
Right? Then he didn't know. He didn't.
But it's not just that. It's not like
he know what he was doing.
It's not like he can go out and be like, I'm one of the ADEM.
Yeah.
Hire me. It'd be like, they'll see real quick he's fucking not. Yeah. And he's exposed real fast. He can't fight like they can.
No.
So he didn't have the skills.
It's not like he could teach the K-Tanda people.
Yeah.
I mean, he could basically he could teach someone the basics, but like, you're having someone who doesn't even understand what he's doing try to teach, and I can tell you, like, that's not the best way to learn something, is to have someone who doesn't know what they're fucking doing try to teach you.
Yeah, that's not going to be very effective. No. He's not going to start his own school that's rivaling what they do. That's really, that's, I mean, I guess I figured you would agree with me on that, because when I came across it, I'm like, well, I mean, not really, but they just, they kind of bashed it in like, yeah, that's what he did. Yeah, he's stealing their shit. Like, well, no, I get that
he asked some questions and practiced shit he was seeing Tempe do. And Tempe gave him some pointers, gave him some help, started training him a bit. And like, so, if you wanted to say that what Tempe did is wrong, like, because you're not even allowed to train, okay, that's fine. What Kvothe did? How is what Kvothe did wrong? Like, he didn't do anything wrong. If Vashet wasn't training him, or if Tempe wouldn't have been in a position where he felt like he needed to get Kvothe ready and really start training him. If Tempe had just, as soon as Case Rhett saw him, if Tempe had stopped right there, and he just goes back and talks to him, and they punish him for training Kvothe, but they don't do anything to Kvothe. Kvothe is not going out into the world and fucking up Adem's money system. Their livelihoods is not going to be impacted at all. He didn't know jack shit at that point. It was only because they made a big fucking deal about it. That's the only reason he started getting better at it and learning more and picking up more and more and more. Like, they put themselves in this position by freaking out.
Yeah, no, I agree completely. And it's also, again, just like that idea of you took their major export. Well, you didn't, because you're not preventing them from still training mercenaries.
Well, you could dilute the value of it if you were able to go out and explain it to the world.
But that's
I don't think you could. That's like I think there's something more going on than just the movement. You could lower the value a little bit, but could you completely dilute it? Are people going to be fighting like Penthe? All the women are going to just start be fighting like Penthe? Doubt it.
Well, it's not like every actor out there is a Dimaru, right? There's a bunch of people posing as if they are, but they're not. It's similar in that sense.
But
so a bunch of
it would be in the sense like if you were the first person teaching all like the modern MMA skills, if you were the first person doing that, you would have a massive advantage. And then if all of a sudden, like, your training system leaked out, someone started teaching it to other people, and then that knowledge started spreading, and more people were learning how to do it and do the same thing as you. Well, then, yeah, that's going to dilute the value of your business. But you still, your value is still, there's a cap on it because you can only train so many people, and you can only...
And he can't.
You can only do so many jobs, so...
Well, not only, he doesn't have that capability, he hasn't done it. So there's all of that is involved. There's also mercenaries in the world. They're just not Adem.
Yeah.
There's other mercenaries. They already have that competition.
Yeah.
So, yeah, the line bothers me.
But if the other mercenaries were better fighters, that would lower the Adem pay. They would get paid less. If the competition was 1-to-1, you're going to drive down prices on mercenaries. So
clearly not.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, obviously.
No, but that's what their worry is that the other mercenaries are going to become as good as them, and that's going to drive down their value, what they live on. So I get their concern. I'm just saying, like, what was happening there did not need to be that. It did not need to be a situation. It wasn't going, if they just told Tempe, stop teaching that kid, and then you have to come back with us, leave him here, you have to come back with us, and we're gonna talk about this. Nothing happens to their school. Kvothe's not out there training the world and Adem fighting after that.
So what if something does happen where Tempe and Kvothe have beef with Shehyn, Vashet, whoever?
Yeah.
So they decide they're going to start their own bed and breakfast, and they're going to train. They're going to start their own school, and the whole book 3 is a spite school. That's all it is. They start school just to fucking fuck with the Adem.
When you think like about their logic, it doesn't. It's so convoluted because the thing that they're feared about, they made it more of a possibility by the end of this section than before.
True,
because now he could go and be a solid trainer and give some people some pointers, and then that system could be out in the world and get practice and fixed, and and people just keep getting better and better at it and modifying it, and eventually they do get it as good. Now he's got that capability where he could go out and kind of spread it. Before, he wasn't spreading shit. He didn't know how to do anything. He could barely do the K-Tan, but he sucked at it. He was terrible. So he wasn't a threat. Now he would be a threat, and they just let him go. It's crazy.
Yeah, it is crazy. That doesn't make sense.
No.
For
You would
the two
think
to
that the
be
system would be is
emphasized.
like if their big concern was, can we trust this guy not to teach her shit? It would be like, let's hang out with him, isolate him from the school. He's got to stay with us for a while and prove that he's a trustworthy person who we know is not going to go out and train people in this shit. You would want you could see that, but why would they train him further if their concern is that the training is going to leak out into the world? And why do they do the K-tan in front of people if they think it's that easy
Yeah,
to pick it up?
It should be behind closed doors. Yeah.
It'd be something they should keep secret, not practice in front of people.
Yeah, because that's how all this happened, man.
Yeah,
it's how all it went down, man.
That's why, like, yeah, it's not understandable how they react to Kvothe. It's ridiculous how they react to Kvothe. Not in like a bad writing way, just in like their culture is weird as shit in that regard.
Yeah.
But and he talks about like the first fight, and he's like, there's two boys years younger than myself, neither of them were in red. They circled each other warily, then fell on each other in a flurry of blows, which reminds me of Kvothe with Sim. That's how I kind of picture it. It's that flurry of blows, just flailing of arms. But yeah, and so she asked him about that, and he's like, they're very quick. And she looked at me, but they seem rather sloppy. I said, being careful to speak quietly. Not at first, but after they started, I pointed at one. His feet were too close together, and the other kept leaning forward, so his balance was off. That's how he got caught in Sleeping Bear. So you see that he is starting to learn these things, where even though he's not great at him yet, he's at least able to kind of perceive what a good fighter would look like, which is important if you're trying to become a good fighter, is to be able to recognize it in other people. And so he's starting to get good at that. Not necessarily good at it, but he's starting to become competent at it.
Yeah, I mean, to be able to see the difference, obviously, is important. So to show that he's understanding, it's also very impactful for us, because now we're seeing what the differences really are. Because it's hard to just put that. It's hard to just state that and have the reader buy it. We need to see examples. We need to see differences.
And then
effectively does it.
And that's where she talks about that the women are better fighters. I mean, the words she says, they fight like puppies. They are young, and boys, they're full of anger and impatience. Women have less trouble with these things. It's part of what makes us better fighters. And he's like, women are better fighters? He says, generally speaking. There are exceptions, of course, but as a whole, women are better. Which again, you could say if she just meant women are better at staying within the Lithani, maybe they are, I don't know. But if she means that, like we beat that fucking horse enough. But yeah. So she goes into explaining the differences with him there, but then like a shadow fell over us, and I looked up to see a tall man in his red standing at a polite distance. He held his hand poised near the hilt of his sword, invitation. Vashet gestured back, gentle regret and refusal. And he's like, won't everybody think less of you for not fighting that guy? She's like, he don't want to fight me. He's just coming up here to show that he's not scared to fight. He's an idiot. He knows I'd whoop his ass, though. This is pure bravado.
It is that sort of foolishness that leads men from the Lithani. So he's showing he's not following the Lithani, by saying, let's go, bro.
Yeah, let's go. Let's go. I'll take you right now. One arm tied behind my back. Wait, you're accepting? No, I was joking.
You know what? Never mind. You're not worth it.
Yeah, never. You're not worth my effort. Challenge revoked.
Yeah. You know what? No, never mind.
Walking away. It's like the fucking workaholics.
That's exactly what just came to my mind.
And they're like, you want to see it? You want to see it? Like, okay. And they're fucking trying to get it up. And they're like, no, never mind. Never mind.
Not today. Maybe another time. Like, oh, okay. Hilarious. That's pretty awkward. You're all braggadocious. And then no.
pull it back as soon as you get challenged on it because you didn't expect to get challenged. Hilarious.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then you got the next match was between two red-shirted mercenaries, and the difference was obvious. Everything was much cleaner and crisper. The two boys were as frantic as sparrows, flapping in the dust, but the fights that followed were elegant as dances. And you go, different fights. Like one stopped when a man bloodied a woman's nose. She rolled her eyes at it. He's like, I couldn't tell if it was from because the girl allowed herself to get struck or the man for being reckless enough to hurt her. And she's like, there's bouts with sword. And then one of them, when it ended, she's like, who won that? He asked, who won that? After a quick exchange of clacking swordplay ended with both women scoring hits at the same time. Neither, she said, frowning. Why don't they fight again if it was a tie, I asked. Vashet frowned. It wasn't a tie. Strictly speaking, Dren would have died in minutes, struck through the lung. Lazarol would have died in days when the wound in her gut soured. And he's like, so Lazarol won? And she's like, no. They both lost. It's, they're both going to die.
I like this whole the back and forth is pretty great because she's kind of like getting a little bit frustrated with him. Like it says Vashet gave me a look of withering contempt and turned her attention back to the next fight. It's like, yeah, you're not getting it, but we're getting it.
How do you win if you die?
Yeah, well,
because you died second. You didn't win,
yeah.
you idiot.
Well, and the point kind of also with the woman getting hit in the nose and the guy being too reckless. Like Kvothe is seeing. But we're seeing it, right?
Yeah.
We're seeing that it is kind of like a dance. Like you're supposed to do this appropriately. That's the Lithani, right? You're supposed to fight with the Lithani. So you're supposed to be careful. You're supposed to be doing this like appropriately, basically. So yeah, who wins a fight? Well, nobody wins. They're both dead. Somebody wins.
Well, yeah, and if you're establishing,
a
win in a fight to, if the fight had been a fight to the death, if you're establishing a win, number one criteria you look for is like, did you die? If you died, you did not win. We're establishing that as number one rule for establishing the winner.
Well, the feeling I was getting, and I was a little bit surprised when she asked Kvothe who won there. I was thinking the point is, it's not that someone wins or loses. It's what happened in the fight, and it's a learning. It's a display of skill and talent, but it's also
different between asking when you ask who won versus did you stay within the Lithani? Because they would look at that like if someone didn't stay within the Lithani, that'd be like dying. If you die, you didn't win.
Yeah.
If you didn't follow Lithani, you didn't win. But that's just like. But when you're establishing a winner, so. Yeah, did he stay within the Lithani? Then he could have won. Did he not die? Then he could have won. But, you're trying to establish whether someone won. Those are just two cases that immediately count you out. You can't win if you die or you don't follow the Lithani.
Well, and I get the impression that when she's asking, so who won on the next fight, she's placating to his mind. She's having his mind go through the process of like, I don't think they would typically say who won, who lost. It's more like they watch the fight and it's obvious.
Yeah.
It's obvious what happened. It's more the happening of what occurred rather than winner loser.
Yeah. And then like the guy that challenged Vashet fights and he gets the girl with the sword and he fights a girl where she's not got a weapon and he's got a sword. And Vashet asks him who won there. He's like, I could tell she wouldn't look for the obvious answer. It's like, it's not much of a victory. She didn't even have a sword. And Vashet says, she is of the third stone and far outstrips him as a fighter. It was the only way for things to be balanced between them unless he were to bring in a companion to fight by his side, Vashet pointed out. So I ask again, who won? He won the bout, I said, but he'll have some impressive bruises tomorrow. Also, his swing seemed somewhat reckless. Vashet turned to look at me. So who won? I thought about it for a moment. Neither, I decided. She nodded, formal approval. The gesture warmed me as everyone facing us could see it. So, and I like those aspects of it where you see the learning process in every fucking detail, like from the the constant practice with the hand fighting, and then the practice with the swords, and not even just the practice with the sword, they practice how to hold the sword and all this kind of stuff. Just the extreme basics and just the katan and all the movements, and they practice all that and the language. And then here she's testing him on, like, can you analyze a fight? Can you look and can you see the mistakes that they're making? Can you see those kind of things? Can you see and be able to judge who wins a fight? Because I don't know if you've ever had, like, I've watched fights with people who have never watched a boxing fight before, and I've asked them in a close fight, like, could you say who's winning the fight? And they don't fucking know. They don't have, like, can they analyze it and tell you why, who's winning or not? They can't. And it's because it takes experience. You got to learn these things to be able to analyze the winner. I mean, sometimes it's obvious someone gets knocked out. Yeah. But in a close fight, it's hard to analyze it. And there's always, there's different
especially
opinions
like
and everything. But even to have an opinion, you have to develop that ability to analyze a fight.
It's especially watching lightweights and middleweights. That's where it's much more difficult because it's about who's landing the most punches, and because that's not haymaker territory, right? Where someone's getting knocked on their ass. I like the other portion of what's kind of happening here as well is it's learning all those different things you had mentioned, but it's also kind of like a perspective. She's kind of like setting his perspective of it's not just about, death and life. It's not about just preventing yourself from dying or overpowering somebody. There's a lot more that he's here to witness.
Yeah.
And then that becomes really clear as it continues to progress. And that's why she's testing him with those questions, and he's doing well. He's progressing. So
yeah.
Not flawlessly, obviously, which is important because he's not American.
I mean, she just gave him a withering look of contempt, like on his last analysis. Idiot. So
idiot, jackass.
Which, when I ask someone if what their analysis is for a fight, if they don't have a good one, I give them a very withering look of contempt.
Just shake your head.
Make them feel real uncomfortable in that room for the rest of the fight.
Idiot.
Like, why are you even here? Why are you even here watching this with us?
What you have to do is, you say those things out loud, but in a really passive-aggressive manner, but aggressively passive-aggressive. Yeah. Fucking moron. This idiot, so they can overhear you. Go into the kitchen with one of your
talk
friends,
real loud in the kitchen.
What a fucking moron. He has no idea what's going on.
Who invited that person?
That's so not nice.
Yeah, and then you get, at long last, Shehyn stepped into the circle. And then, seeing her among the other Adim, I realized how small she was. A little tiny girl like Tim. And alongside Shehyn came a much younger woman.
I do.
She was shorter than Shehyn by an inch or so. Like, this is your community.
I do like what he does say here. She carried herself with such confidence that I had come to think of her as taller, but she barely came up to the shoulder of some of the taller Adim. Which, hey, for all you short guys out there, as long as you walk with confidence, people think you're taller. So there you go.
Like you are much much taller than I would have expected, even though, like, you're extremely short. You're much taller than you the impression you give off.
This oh my goodness.
Like the exact opposite of Shehyn.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
It's the exact opposite. Well, I was trying to boost people's confidence out there. I was trying to tell them it's worth it. Which is always a great piece of advice.
Worth it for them. I don't know why you don't practice that, but whatever.
A great piece of advice for young men. It's like, what's the secret? Oh, just be really confident. Offer a lot of value. For someone who's developed no skills,
if you
doesn't have reasons to be confident.
If you can, be extremely funny. That's a huge bonus. Really works.
Yeah, just be like fucking awesome. Be like really, really awesome.
Are you really good? Are you really athletic? That helps too. If you're really athletic,
if you're good looking, if you're athletic,
lots of money.
If you're confident,
you really want a lot of money.
Well, and hopefully you made that money on your own because that's going to exude more confidence, right?
Huge double dong. That always helps.
What, what is this double dong shit?
I
mean,
don't know,
Fitz like
man.
brought
Like
this up initially.
sometimes I miss Fitz, and I bring him,
Yeah,
him up. I'm not recovered from his passing, and he's passed on. But sometimes I miss him, and I bring up some of his better lines. That was a great one.
Yeah, he's behind the doors of forgetting for me.
Well, I understand. Like, it's hard to move on from a loss like that, and so sometimes the loss is that hard where you have to kind of block out the memory.
Yeah. I mean, actually, that hasn't been that hard for me.
Just went behind the doors because you like them. You just like those doors.
No offense to you or anyone or to Fitz.
Yeah.
No offense, but you laughed and it was like you were never here.
Yeah, you fucking jerk. We were never friends to begin with. At 20 years, I was faking the whole time.
I was faking the whole time. I like you're calling me a jerk after just like really aggressively slanderizing me. So.
But you convinced me. You won me with your argument.
Yeah. I was saying.
And I'm a little mad that he made me feel bad. So, just got me all emotional. And, when I get emotional, I react with anger. So.
Nice.
But yeah, and then so he comes up with, as far as Penthe, he's like, her frame was more delicate too. Her small face and shoulders making her look almost childlike. But the pronounced curve of her high breasts and round hips beneath her tight mercenary reds made it obvious she was no child. Penthe's over there looking like a miniature Beyonce there.
Yeah, I'm a big Beyonce.
Yeah, she's got a terrible body. You would never look at that body and be like, that's attractive.
Not who comes to mind for me, but that's okay. Each his own, as I mentioned a moment ago.
But then you get, the two of them raised their swords and began to circle each other. The young woman was amazing. She struck so fast I could barely see the motion of her hand, let alone the blade of her sword. But Shehyn brushed it away casually with drifting snow, taking half a step in retreat. Then, before Shehyn could respond with an attack of her own, the young woman spun away, her long braid swinging. You got them just moving lightning quick, stabbing at each other, and it's a game of who can make contact, which would be just if all you were trying to do is make contact, that's not that difficult in a fight. Like, strong contact is difficult, but just touching a person is not that difficult. And so the fact that they're able to avoid touches, even when they got swords for the length and all that kind of shit, that would be a massively impressive skill if you could avoid hits that well.
This is one of those things that, I mean, I kind of mentioned this earlier, but I don't know if it's CGI. I don't know if it's just going to have to be like a particular type of how you shoot it, like almost on what I would love to think is it brings us into some new technology, like the Matrix did. Remember seeing the Matrix, like first scene, you're like, whoa, what the fuck? Like, I've never seen anything do this.
Yeah. It's hard. It's hard to make sword fighting both look realistic and for the actor to make it look good. Because unfortunately, most actors are not good athletes, and they look ridiculous when they try to do something athletic. Like watching a lot of them run, you're like, what the fuck? Like he's supposed to, like, like you look at them run and you're like, that person's not fast. That person's got terrible running.
Well, there is an exception. I mean, Steven Seagal, right?
Yeah, he's blazing fast, unbelievable athlete.
His running form is so hilarious.
Have you seen the video of Steven Seagal's Saturday Night Live appearance?
No.
Oh my god, it is amazing. Amazing.
Like so bad amazing?
So bad. Like he's forgetting his lines, stumbling over himself.
He's not particularly funny, right?
No, I mean, he's not. And he doesn't remember his lines and stuff, or he misspeaks them, and I can't.
Man, you
explain
really think
how,
he'd be such a
how
skilled...
hilariously bad it is, like over the top bad that it's so bad it makes it even funnier.
You'd think he'd be like a really like super skilled thespian after all those Under Siege.
Like, he's a movie guy. That's live improv. Like, that's different.
I'm fucking joking, man.
I know.
The movies he did,
like he's
don't...
like that. I'm being over the top too. Like with the
okay, yeah, because
defending
the movies he's in, he's not doing dramatic role. It's all the same face. He has the same face, same tone.
I don't know. Like Under
constantly.
Siege is basically like, I don't know. What would you compare that to? What's the movie with Tom Cruise and Jack Nicholson? A Few Good Men? Or is that not A Few Good Men? What is the one where it's like, you can't handle the truth?
That's A Few Good Men. Yeah.
Okay, yeah. Yeah, it's basically like Under Siege and A Few Good Men. It's same performances, level-wise, acting-wise. Like Tom Cruise, Jack Nicholson, the
Tommy
guy
Lee
that's in
Jones.
Usual Suspects.
Tommy Lee Jones. Is
Kevin Bacon. Like,
oh yeah, Kevin Pollak.
What's her face? Demi
Moore.
Yeah.
Demi Moore.
And like, you could put all their performances and like they're like half a step behind Seagal in Under Siege. Pretty sure he won an Oscar for that. Like, no. I think he swept the Oscars.
No. He swept? Oh.
Yeah. He won every award you could win.
I don't think he's ever... Oh, fuck, I don't know. If he's
Google it. You'll find it. If not, then they probably erased it from Google because it was a feat that will never be broken.
Yeah, he's... there. You know, it's funny, though, because there was that... I was the right age to watch, like, a lot of those movies and actually enjoying them, and then I get a little bit older and just like...
Yeah, they're ridiculous.
They don't age well.
No. Action movies are tough. It's tough to make an action movie that ages well.
Yeah, those definitely don't.
That era's action movies got pretty fucking ridiculous.
It's really funny too, and I love that It's Always Sunny did this with their Thunder
Lethal
Gun
Weapons.
Express. Well,
with
the
Thunder
saxophone.
Gun, yeah.
So every one of those movies, all those action movies, they had the love element, and that love element, in case you didn't know it was the love element, here comes soft saxophone.
Yeah.
Every fucking movie, dude. It's like, wow, okay, this is late 80s, early 90s.
Yeah.
In case you didn't know.
Late 80s, early 90s. Loved the saxophone.
Yeah, it tells you like, oh, this is the era we're in. Okay, all right.
But yeah, and so he's like, the young woman was amazing. She struck so fast I could barely see the motion of her hand, let alone the blade of her sword. But Shehyn brushed it away casually with drifting snow, taking half a step in retreat. Then before Shehyn could respond with an attack of her own, the young woman spun away, her long braid swinging. Which I already read, but to get back into it. And then, who is she? I asked. Penthe, Vashet said admiringly. She is a fury, is she not? Like one of her old ancestors. And then, Penthe and her keep going back and forth. And there's like, her back leg thrust out for balance, not even touching the ground. Her sword arm licked out in front of her. Her knee bent so deeply that her entire body was below the level of my head, even though I was sitting cross-legged on the ground. Which is great visual.
Yeah, it is. When I see that back leg thrust out for balance, for whatever reason, what came to mind was Pai Mei, Kill Bill 2.
Mm-hmm.
Like, he does some wild shit in that movie where he's like, basically able to almost not levitate. But that was a movie that did capture some really crazy physical abilities, added sound, which helped. That definitely helps. But some of the things...
like if you wanted to look at sword fighting done well, that movie does sword fighting really well.
Well, what I'm thinking about is the training where, I guess she had a wood sword, but Pai Mei didn't have anything. He has hands behind his back.
Yeah.
His back. And he's just doing some wild shit. Yeah.
Yeah.
Fucking amazing.
But yeah, and then so Penthe unfurled all this sinuous motion as quickly as you can snap your fingers. And I love that he's like, what the fuck is that? Why haven't you taught me that? And it's like, there's no way possible I could ever do that. But yeah, and then you also get that Shehyn is moving, not just moving away, but she's moving perfectly, not darting out of reach. She was quick, but that was not the heart of how she moved. Instead, she was deliberate and perfect. She was already halfway gone before Penthe's sword had begun to flick toward her leg. The tip of Penthe's sword must have come within an inch of her knee, but it was not a close thing. Shehyn had only moved as much as was needed, no more. Like that kind of shit, that is not realistic. It's not possible unless you're thinking like when Kvothe is able to do this shit, it's when he's got access to the name of the wind. It's a magical thing. Like his sleeping mind is able to do this. He's not able to do it naturally. So if it's that, them living here and they got kind of an access to the sleeping mind from all this time that they've spent in this environment, then it would make a lot of sense that she would be able to move in a way that is just otherworldly.
That's a real challenge for a director.
Mm-hmm.
That's the one that I would love to see a new, something that blows the nips off basically, because the way that past movies would have done this is slow everything down.
Slow-mo and zoom in on the blade.
Yeah. You slow-mo, but Shehyn's not in slow-mo. You know what I mean? Like the slow-mo comes in for her, but not for everyone else.
Give the actors real swords, so that way there's consequences if they screw up, and they'll get it right.
Sounds like something like Mickey Rourke would do.
Yeah.
You know?
Like, is that a real sword?
Get all
like, that
sliced
sword
up.
Looks real. Oh, it is. It's 100% real. I'm going to swing it at your face, and I'm going to miss by an inch.
I love the idea of particular actor, like method actors, like, let's do it. He just gets all jacked up. Like,
there's like a practice dummy, and he's swinging at it. It's all wood, and it's just like wood flying everywhere. He's like but he's like practicing, like coming within an inch of it, but he's just like chopping the head off the wood dummy. It's like, don't worry, I'm great live.
Yeah.
I turn it on when it comes time to do this live. I turn it on and start nailing it.
No, man. Yeah.
All right. I'm gonna go ahead and quit now.
No, that's what stunt doubles are for, right?
Yeah.
Like, don't they kill stunt doubles in every movie?
Yeah. They at least seven a movie on average.
They just go through a ton of human beings that are like ex-gymnasts that are just amazing athletes.
Like, hold
on,
you had 7 people die making that movie? Oh, no, it was stunt doubles. That's what they know what they're signing up for. Really makes the movie pop and sizzle, though.
That should be like that would be a way to promote a movie. It's not like how much the budget was. Yeah. It'd be like, budget, location, actors, all that's on point.
37 stuntmen died making this movie, so you know these stunts are going to be top notch. We didn't stop after 10 of them died. We kept going and pushing until we got it right.
Worth it.
Yeah, and so she's taking her perfect steps back, and then you get the part where it's like, no, she threw herself away from the ground using only her left hand. Her body snapped like a steel spring, arching away while her sword licked out twice, driving Shehyn back. So Penthe, like, just doing something that's just like physically, how would you possibly do this? Where your arms hitting the ground and you're just springing yourself up and twirling around, throwing, like, the movements of that would, it like you see some of those like Jet Li movies that they've done where they're spinning around and fighting in the air and flying through the air and they're doing it all on wires and shit. It's kind of how you picture that type of movement. Or when she's getting so low that it seems like you'd have to do it on wires or something. But yeah, she's moving her body in ways that just, you would have to do something different because you're just not physically, people aren't being able to do that.
It's a really interesting balance because you want to push that level of acceptance where you're not out of the movie, where you're not like, all right, well, this is just some straight up fantasy shit. Because there is a bit of a license here, right? Because she's doing things that, like, they don't sound physically possible. And in their world, they're able to do things that people can't do in other parts of the world. At least that's the impression we get. So you have a bit more of a license, but for the viewer or the reader, you still want it to be digestible. You don't want to break the.
I think if you made it a little bit more clear that there's something magical going on, then it's easy to suspend that disbelief. But like when you see like the Matrix, when he goes and like he does tries to jump kick Lawrence Fishburne.
Mm-hmm.
And, Lawrence Fishburne, like, he kicks and Lawrence Fishburne blocks him. But, like, Neo goes and does, like, 5 or 6 kicks in a row in the air, like bicycle kick, basically.
Mm-hmm.
He does a bunch of flurry of kicks in the air as he's floating in the air. Like, those kind of things, like, it's not done in a way that looks outlandish, where it's like, it looked fucking awesome. Yeah. So the first time you see that, you're like, oh, damn, that was dope.
Well, and you're getting the progression, and Morpheus is like reacting with surprise, like, oh shit, like.
But that fight is actually kind of in that vein. Is how I kind of picture this fight, is how they're moving and that kind of stuff. Like, when you see like when Neo's throwing the punches at him and he's just dodging out of the way just barely and that kind of stuff. Like, yeah, that's kind of how I picture this fight. Something in that vein.
The other key is you got to go.
Yeah, you definitely want to make the noises with your mouth. Like, that's key. Yeah, do the $6 Million Man while they're fighting.
Yeah, that's the key, man. What do you do? Just like cheese it out?
Yeah.
It's like totally just go the complete opposite direction. We're like, wait, what? Like,
what would be great is like you see it and then you just hear the, but then it's like Vashet like turns and looks at Kvothe and she's like, would you shut the fuck up? It's just Kvothe making the sound effects to himself.
It's like when he was humming and they thought he was wiping his ass with bread.
I'm sorry, I'm a performer. This is what I do.
I was really into it. Well, he does get really into it. He's all sweating and shit. So
yeah.
He was just doing it, not knowing he's just like, dude, it's in me and I just can't help it. So I just.
And you get some great prose from Rothfuss, the way he writes it with Penthe was full of passion and fury. Shehyn was calm and steady. Penthe was a storm. Shehyn a stone. Penthe was a tiger. Shehyn a bird. Penthe danced and wove madly. Shehyn turned and took one single perfect step. And then, Penthe lands a blow against Shehyn. Shehyn lowers her sword and gesturing irritation, admiration, and mingling of other things I couldn't identify. And then I like Kvothe's like, so is Penthe the leader now? It's just like, what?
Yeah.
Like, she immediately just starts laughing and mocking him. Like, anytime Kvothe doesn't understand how their society works, she thinks that shit's hilarious. It's like, you're such a stupid idiot. How could you possibly think that? You idiot. You're so dumb.
Yeah, it would have been, I do sometimes kind of want that. Like,
yeah.
For like,
I love it. I love that I like the fact that Vashet tears him down so much because of, most of the time people are very impressed with Kvothe. Vashet is not that impressed with most of what Kvothe does.
Mm-hmm.
She's impressed within context of like, you're doing very well for someone who doesn't know what they're doing. Like, the speed at which you're improving, that's impressive. Your skill level is not impressive at all. Your knowledge is not impressive. I'm not impressed with how you speak. You think stupid things. Like, she's not, like, it's not like she's walking away thinking Kvothe's fucking King Ding-Along.
No. Ding-Along? I haven't heard that one.
Yeah.
Ding-Along, okay. It's a new one. Is that your invention?
That's my invention.
Okay.
That's how you say that.
Yeah, no, she does.
King along the double dong.
She almost like pulls her punches in a way of not saying, "Oh, you're a big idiot," but I mean, she kind of pours it on.
Yeah, and then horrified, I turned to Vashet and said that, and then she's like, no, she's old. She's a grandmother. You can't expect her to always win against a limber young thing like Penthe, all full of fire and fresh wind. And she's like, what kind of crazy ass society would this be? We're all our leaders is flipping based on the luck of a fight. Like, even if you're the
ridiculous
best fighter, you're gonna lose some fights.
Yeah, there's
it's gonna happen.
Change leaders over and over and over again.
Your leaders are always gonna be like the youngest, strongest people.
Yeah, that's probably not gonna be ideal.
No,
right?
No.
Not going to be ideal.
Picking your leaders based on athleticism.
Yeah, that's
and
never
strength.
a good idea. That's never a good idea.
Not their mind, their physical ability. But yeah, and then, Shehyn comes up and she's like, what happened? Why was I struck? And he starts thinking back to the final moments of it. He says, you misplaced your heel slightly. I said, your left heel. Shehyn nodded. Good. She gestured pleased approval widely enough so anyone who had happened to be watching could see it. And of course, everyone was. I leaned my head close to Vashet's. I like Shane's little hat, I said. Vashet shook her head and sighed. Come. She jostled my shoulder with her own and got to her feet. We should leave before you spoil the good impression you have made today.
That was another good one where it's like, all right, shut the fuck up. Let's go.
Constantly talking shit to him. Constantly.
I like her little hat.
Yeah. I like that hat. You fucking nerd.
Like, dude, get up. You're going to fuck this all up. You were ahead.
You're going to be talking about cloaks in 5 minutes. I can already tell.
The next time. Yeah, like another way to play that out is he's like chasing after Shan. Like, I really like your hat. I have this cloak. And do you know anything about cloaks?
Yeah.
There's all these pockets. You should think about it. Have you ever worn a cloak? She's like dragging him away. Like, dude, shut the fuck up.
Stop telling people about your stupid cloak. But yeah, and then he goes into the room and he talks about how once he would go and sit like in a corner because he's like, I don't want to take up space, where people might actually want to sit, So he goes like into a corner by himself. Should have to be an extremely lonely existence where the only time you have any companionship is when you're training with Vashet. Outside of that, you're just isolated by yourself. And then he sees someone coming up and he's thinking it's Kvothe, who apparently likes to periodically come up to him and just talk shit. So that's his only other interaction is Kvothe walking up, talking smack to him. Yeah.
He gets roasted periodically throughout the day while he's having his lunch. It's nice.
Yeah. Yeah. She's probably throwing out stupid jokes like, what are you eating over there? Gingerbread? No. Hey, look, it's the gingerbread man. Get it? His hair? You get it? They all crack up because they got terrible comedy. Except Tempe's hilarious, so no, I take that back. They have great comedy. They would not laugh at Kvothe's bad jokes. She would not be seen as funny.
The last interaction we had, Kvothe won.
Yeah, he completely dressed her down. Yeah, that's the only time we see them together. He talks shit to her, calling her a dog. She talks like a dog.
Like, yeah, you talk a lot of shit. A lot of nah. Like what Tempe did with Day Dan. Yeah. It was just like mouth, or what I don't remember exactly what he did, but he's like bark, big fucking idiot. Yeah, I like that. I like that a lot. Say something else. Something else.
But then he looks up and he sees it's Vashet, and so he's finally starting to get in good enough with her where she is willing to be seen with him in public, and it's kind of it's not so much like hey man, I really want to hang out with them. I think it's more of a gesture to like show like, hey, this kid is trying and he's learning and he's giving an effort. I think it's a signal to everybody else, similar to when she whooped the shit out of him. That was a signal to everybody. That was a warning to everybody that she was pissed at him. So I think her coming up to him is more calculated than just like, hey, it's my buddy Kvothe. Let me go sit with him and talk.
Yeah, no, I got the same. I definitely got the same impression there. It's especially in their world, man. It's all about observation.
Yeah. But yeah, and then so he asks Vashet, it occurs to me that it would be nice to fight someone whose ability is somewhat closer to my own. And Vashet laughs, shaking her head. That is like throwing two virgins into a bed. Enthusiasm, passion, and ignorance are not a good combination. Someone is likely to get hurt, which fucking cracks me up. Again, she's just, every time he says anything, she cuts him down in this chapter. It's hilarious.
Yeah, it's very consistent.
It's funny to read. If I was Kvothe, I would be getting tired of it unless like he was giving it back to her, and they had like a
Yeah.
good back and forth, and they're like playing around and that kind of shit. But if I'm just eating shit constantly, like,
Yeah,
and
that
this
doesn't work for
person
me.
is not, and this person is doing it like because they think lowly of me. It's not, they're not just joking around having fun, but they actually think less of me, and they're just talking shit like that. And then I would have a problem with it. But reading
Yeah.
it, it's fucking, I find it hilarious that she treats Kvothe like this, especially given how many people fawn over Kvothe. It's just funny to see him in that kind of a situation.
Yeah, no, it really is. And it that's one of the things that I've referred to a bunch of times that really kind of sticks with you because he takes it. I mean, he keeps progressing in his life throughout the world, especially going to the mayor. He's progressing. He has a little setback, but he keeps progressing. And then here, no, he gets just really set back in a big, big way. And even when he's progressing, he's still like with Vashet, it's still like you were saying, that'd be a problem for me. It's one thing if I can give shit back, because then it's a mutual thing. We're both fucking with each other. But if I'm just getting reamed constantly, yeah. After a while, I'm like, I have a low level of acceptance for shit like that.
Yeah, but I mean, it seems pretty good natured from her. She doesn't seem like she, is doing it in a necessarily like a derogatory. It seems like a shit talking way. That's just like her personality is like shit talking. So that wouldn't bother me.
It'd be pretty good if you're a jerk. He just suddenly
Yeah. Stop
just
being
hey,
mean to me.
stop it.
Stop being mean.
He just slams his tray and just can't take
throws
it.
his sword down and like, I'm not listening to you anymore. You're
It
a
would be
jerk.
it would be great if like this moment, right? Because now he's getting acceptance. Now she comes to like give this visual display and he loses his shit like right at this
Yeah.
moment. Like right as he's progressing and he can't take it anymore.
Like
Oh
walks
man.
off and then like stops as he's walking off and then like moons her. It's like completely childish nonsense.
Goes and gets his cloak.
Yeah.
Next time they see him, he's walking around in his cloak and everybody starts making
Kiss
fun of him.
my butt, Vashet. You see it? Kiss it.
You're a jerk. You're a jerk.
But yeah, so she agrees. He talks about how, fighting her is not fun because any hit he gets, she lets him do, and she's like, no, anything you get on me is earned. But, earned within context. She is letting him, but she's letting him for training purposes, most likely. But yeah, and so she agrees though. She's like, I'll very well continue your progress, and I'll find someone at your own level to fight, which is hilarious because the person at his level is a 12-year-old little girl.
Yeah, which I believe, if I remember right, is embarrassing as shit.
Yeah, and Celine could be an instant massive fan favorite if it's cast right. Similar to Arya, like Arya is going to be a massive hit as soon as they put her on screen. And yeah, I think if you cast this girl right, it could be in a similar vein.
Yeah,
but yeah,
yeah,
then
for sure.
we get chapter 116, Height. I was almost beginning to feel comfortable in Hert. My language was improving, and I felt less isolated now that I was able to exchange brief pleasantries with others. Vashet occasionally shared meals with me, helping me to feel slightly less of a pariah. I mean, and just the recap of this chapter this is the chapter where he starts boning and old Adimre.
Oh my goodness, I'm not ready for that.
Some sexy time, so
Oh no, I can't handle it.
Get them pearls and clutch them.
Yeah,
Because we're getting into some sexy time.
oh my goodness.
But yeah, and so, because we had done sword training, sword work this morning, which meant an easy start to the day. Vashet was still showing me how the sword was incorporated into the Katan, and the moments we fought were few and far between. After a few hours of this, we worked on my Ademic, then more sword work. So it's like not only is he like doing sword work, he's doing basic sword work where he's just learning how to move properly with the sword. He's not practicing for hours of this. He's doing this every single day, hours of this kind of stuff. So it's a slow, painstaking process for him to get where he gets. Even though like he advances at a faster rate than normal, it's not like they're looking at him like, this is unbelievable.
Yeah, no. But yeah, I mean, well, she does say, we kind of skipped over that, but I guess we somewhat talked about it, but he says, but you yourself said my K-Tan is remarkably good. I said your K-Tan was remarkably good considering the amount of time you have been studying, which is less than 2 months, which is no time at all.
Yeah.
So it fits in with what we've talked about, right? He's adept once he's focused, and this is 100% what he's doing. He's not distracted with anything else. He's not playing music. He's not studying. He's getting sleep. He's eating. Like, everything's on point for him to focus and to make it work. And it's working, but it's still painstaking, like you were saying. It's not like it comes super easy.
No, it definitely doesn't come easy. He works his ass off. Like if you come away thinking like Kvothe picks his stuff up easy, you're reading a completely different book to me, because I'm reading a book about a kid that works his ass off. Mm-hmm. For everything he does, he's putting in 16-hour day, like to the point of exhaustion. Like when he first starts at the university, he was like going to burn out because he was working so hard.
He kind of like lost his mind a little bit.
Yeah. Like he's not sleeping, and he's just going from class to class. He was just killing himself. Well,
and then at the time that he finally got in the library, and then it was like library, where it was like he was kind of. If I remember right, they took him to the Aeolian, and he was still kind of like in this mental state of like it felt weird to not be in the library with books.
Yeah. So the kid works his ass off, and like there's just ridiculous to be like he just picks things up easy. It's like he picks things up quickly, not easily. He works his ass off, and he picks them up quicker than someone else would pick it up. But he doesn't. It's not a process that doesn't take a shit ton of work from him.
He is capitalizing on opportunity.
Yeah.
That's what he's doing. He's getting the opportunity, and he's doing everything he can to capitalize on those opportunities. So, that's not, that's earned.
Yeah.
It's not just given to him. That's for sure.
But yeah, and then so after lunch, they moved on to hand fighting, and he's like, he's feeling like he was starting to get better at that, and he was progressing well. And because Vashet is having to put more effort into it, so she's starting to breathe heavier, she's starting to sweat, so she's making an effort. It's like still, I was still no sort of challenge to her, of course, but after days of humiliating nonchalance on her part, she was finally having to put forth a shred of effort to keep ahead of me. And so they're fighting, and then he's like, and I noticed that, how could I say this delicately? She smelled wonderful. Not like perfume or flowers or anything like that. She smelled like clean sweat and oiled metal and crushed grass from when I'd thrown her to the ground some time before. It was a good smell. I can't describe this delicately, I suppose. What I mean to say is she smelled like sex. Not as if she'd been having it, as if she was made of it.
Oh, my goodness. I will say,
the way they gets turned on by weird smells for one. So
he loves dirt.
He's all about sweat. Like dirt and grass, and
he likes girls with BO. He loves girls with BO.
Loves BO.
And dust, road dust.
Yeah,
he's big on road dust, sweat. He likes dirt, grass. Apparently, big into grass, dirt, road dust. I think he was destined to be with like another Ademaru, because that's probably what he smells like.
Yeah, and the metal, and oil, like he would probably get really turned on, like at one of those like monster truck rallies. All the dust and dirt and the smoke and oil and gas. Like he'd be like, "Oh shit, I'm surrounded by sex, sexy time smells." But so he smells her and gets all turned out, which, I don't like get all worked up over smells like that. I would be more apt over like perfume or something that smells like a girl.
No, I get where like he's going with it. I'm buying in on what he's talking about. It's also they're rolling around together, whatever, not rolling, but they're doing their thing, and there is actually, oddly enough, as you kind of go through the chapter, there is actually an interesting sort of ability of arousal in the way he writes it. You know what I'm saying? Like even for the reader itself, which I've read plenty of books that have sex in them, which does actually create sort of arousing, verbiage, like Penthouse.
Yeah, no, I've seen Tim read this chapter. It's very uncomfortable.
You've watched me read the chapter?
Made me very uncomfortable. I felt like I shouldn't be in the same room at the time.
The idea of watching someone reading a chapter is pretty just like over the shoulder.
Yeah. Man. But yeah, like I mean, it's understandable too. Like he gets all turned on. He's like grappling with her and the smell of her, and he's like, I for a second it was like someone had thrown a switch in my head. All I could think of was kissing her mouth, biting the soft of the skin of her neck, tearing at her clothes, and licking the sweat off her. I did none of these things, of course, but at the moment I wanted nothing more. This is embarrassing to look back on, but I will not bother defending myself except to point out that I was in full flower of my youth, fit and healthy, and she was quite an attractive woman, though 10 years my senior. So I don't think that there's, many 16, 17, 18-year-old men who haven't had experiences with no apparent reason getting a hard-on, much less rolling around with a fucking hot, attractive older woman. Like, I mean, older in the sense that she's like mid-20s.
Dude, NARBs would happen in math class.
Yeah, no reason whatsoever.
Yeah, at all. And now you have to go up and do a problem on the board. So you're doing the tuck. The old-fashioned up tuck.
And there's not a guy that wouldn't understand what the tuck is because it happens to every fucking guy. So, like, I mean, you got to put that in the context of Kvothe is in that part of his life. And that's why, he's like, look, I'm not apologizing for this. I'm just saying I was a young fucking dude. And
well, there's a couple things
with an attractive woman. Sorry, I got aroused.
There's a couple things. Number one, if you think about it in detail, which you got to give Rothfuss credit, he clearly does these things when he's writing these scenes and these situations. This would be a very logical occurrence to happen. It would be very illogical for it to not. Now, if it didn't happen, then probably it's not going to pop up in our minds, but it's something that's extraordinarily logical to have happen. But then also the way he describes it, for a second, it was like someone had thrown a switch in my head. 100% that's what happens.
Yeah.
Once
absolutely.
Your head goes there, you're not leaving it. And she knows. That's why she's like, all right, let's go get this done. What are we doing?
Yeah. When you have like that kind of attraction towards someone, try turning that shit off in that moment. Like you're not going to do it continuing to do the same thing that brought it on.
No.
I can tell you
you're
that.
You're going to have to leave. You're going to have to leave. It's,
got to go somewhere else and cool down for a minute.
Yeah. Yeah. And probably not go back to what you were doing.
Now,
it just come right back.
Where it's a little bit weird is like after the fact. Although the way Kvothe handles it is he feels really awkward, and Vashet's not awkward at all. I would feel very awkward in that environment. Like if all of a sudden I had sex with my teacher, and then I gotta like go to class and everything and see her, and it's not romantic at all. We just had sex, that's it. Like it would be very weird going to class with that teacher after that.
Well, the way that you're describing, or the way that I'm picturing what you mean, I can see that. But there are many times that I had sex with a woman and I thought, this might be awkward at like the next time that I see them or whatever. But I always did my best to not make it awkward, and it was never on me. Sometimes with them it would be, but I was very good at keeping it.
That is not
awkward.
A problem for me. Like in a like just in a casual setting. But if they were my teacher,
or like a coworker,
or like like a boss, or someone who was in a position of authority over me, like it would be very fucking weird. So I get why Kvothe is a little weirded out, especially because he's young. So he really doesn't know how to handle it. I could internally feel weird and outwardly not express that. And Kvothe does as well, but I wouldn't feel as weird as Kvothe does, but it would still be weird. Especially if I was his age.
I've never had that dynamic with someone who is like in an authoritative position over me. In my mind, it'd be like, all right, well, when's this happening next? Would be what I would think,
Yeah.
because it'd make the workday a lot more interesting. It's funny that what you just mentioned about Kavo's awkwardness is really funny, because we get back to what he is with Denna, where he's like, did I do something wrong? Is that why, is she's not saying anything because I did something wrong? I either did something really right or I did something really wrong.
Yeah.
It's one of those two extremes. He can't just be even Steven the way that he is. So it's like, I either did something really, really good or something really, really bad, and she's just going to ignore it. It's like, no, they just look at it like you guys just did push-ups together.
Yeah. They just brushed each other's teeth.
Yeah. Actually, that'd be pretty weird.
Yeah, it would be super weird, but apparently, like, they think that's no big deal.
Yeah, yeah. Her approach is, it's pretty great. It's very memorable.
But add to this the simple fact that I had gone from the loving arms of Felurian to the eager arms of Losine, and from there a long barren stretch of training with Tempe as we traveled to Hair. That meant for 3-span I had been constantly exhausted, anxious, confused, and terrified by turns. Now I was none of these things. Vashet, it talks about Vashet had kind of calmed him down and got him to relax, and now that he was relaxed, he's like, yeah, I kind of like that sex thing I started having. I'd like to keep that going. Be like having sex at a early age, and then like get a girlfriend and you're consistently having sex, and then break up, and then go a long period of time without a girlfriend at that age. It'd be very hard to adjust to that.
Yeah,
it'd be almost better to have not had sex the first time if you're gonna have a long fucking drought after that.
Yeah, you're probably right about that, I would imagine. Yeah, you pretty much just want to, rebound. Find another partner, basically. Once you've
once I started,
you've opened that door,
was like, it was like, I'm going to keep doing this for quite a while.
Yeah, once that door opens,
this is going to be like, part of my routine for a bit.
Yeah. Once that door opens, it's like, all right, well, this is what I'm doing on a consistent basis for as far as I can see, because this is the new fun thing that's part of my life.
Yeah, I like this. I thought it was. I gave it 2 thumbs up, and it's definitely sufficed, and I'm gonna keep doing it.
Sufficed. It was nice. It's enjoyable enough that it's becomes an addiction for a lot of people.
Yeah,
but yeah, I mean, especially at that age. I mean, what the fuck, man? Like, it's all the mind thinks about for a good period of time.
Then we get the hilarious line, which I think these are some of the things people don't like, but to me, it's like he's just trying to be funny, and to me, it lands. It is hilarious, but he's not writing this to be awkward or weird, or like he's getting super saucy. He's trying to be funny. It's a 17-year-old kid getting a boner and trying to hide it in front of his teacher. He's like,
I think given he's all injecting comic relief into the situation.
100%.
And allowing the situation to play
comedy
out the way
to this, this scene and to this section of the books. But it's like, given all this, is no great surprise I had a reaction I did. At the time, however, I startled and embarrassed as only a young man can be. I stepped away from Vashet, blushing and fumbling an apology. I tried to obvious my obvious arousal, and in doing so only drew more attention to it. Vashet looked down at what my hands were trying to vainly conceal. Well then, I suppose I will take that as a compliment and not a curious new avenue of attack. That's fucking funny.
Yeah.
I mean, that's not your sense of humor. It's not your sense of humor, but that's an attempt at humor.
It fits her character.
Yeah. Yeah, it's fucking hilarious to me.
Well, it fits her character just in terms of
if a girl said that to me, I'd be like, man, that girl is the fucking wittiest person. Like, I was like, that's such a fucking witty, funny line to say in that moment, just out of the blue.
Yeah, that is, yeah.
But yeah, and then and I like his react. If a person could die from shame, I would have. It's just also fucking funny. It's a classic little scene. Yeah. But yeah, and then so she's going to him. She's like, would you like to take care of it yourself, or would you prefer a partner? I beg your pardon? Come now again. Say that again. Well,
that would
say that one more time. I could not have possibly heard you right.
Yeah, that would have been pretty shocking in that circumstance for sure. Like, wait, what?
Yeah. Yeah, and then, she's like, come now. Even if you could keep your mind away from that, it would doubtless throw off your balance. You'll need to attend to it before we can continue your lessons. I can leave you to it, or we can find a soft spot and see who can pin each other the best at 2 out of 3. And I love that aspect of her coming in with the humor and having fun with the situation and treating it very casually. I mean, that's extremely casual with someone if you're cracking jokes and shit as you're talking about, let's go have sex for the first time together.
Yeah, and that's the thing in our world, and I assume it seems like in Kvothe's world, you don't get here without a bunch of, for him, a bunch of poems and witticisms.
I can't think of a time where I joked my way into having sex with a girl for the first time. Like where I was cracking jokes about let's go have sex.
I've done it, but it wasn't successful.
I was gonna say, it's like I don't even know how they would pull that off. Like, it seems like it would seem like if a guy was doing it, it would seem like it's one of those weak moves of like you make a proposition like, hey, we should go out on a date, but you're giving yourself that out to make it, in case she says no, you're giving yourself the fallback of like, oh no, I was just joking. I didn't really want to go.
I've done this, but I've gotten the phone number as a result of it. But what I basically did was I came up after some dude tried a line that was horrible, and I came in super hard as a joke. You know what I mean? When I say super hard, I mean I went straight to the hole with what I said to her as a joke, and it landed, and then we just kept going there. We just back and forth was, but yeah,
I've never gone up to a girl and
end up going to the bathroom and making it happen.
Making jokes about like, hey, let's go bone right now.
That's a joke?
Yeah.
That's the joke?
Yeah. Yeah, that would be a bad one. It's not even that funny. Although it would be funny if it's with, I have said that to a girl, like as a girlfriend, like, hey, like, when walks by, like, hey, you want a bone? And then doing like the humping motion. She fucking lost it.
Yeah, that's pretty funny.
But yeah.
Oh, shit.
But no, I wouldn't do that to like a girl that I've never had sex with. That would be a weird approach.
Yeah,
you have to know someone to attempt the humorous sex proposition.
Well, it's good to open with a joke, but to open with sex,
yeah,
the context has to be very, very clear.
Yeah,
and it probably has to be someone. Well, and I'll say this: if it's someone that you've been, if this would be applicable, if you're starting to slide into the friend zone with a girl that you've been hanging out with that you do want we would rather not be in the friend zone with, start doing this.
Yeah.
Start pushing it in that other direction. See if you can go there. If it's not going to go there, well, then give up, whatever. Or just go wherever you're going to go with it. But it's a good way to test those boundaries,
Yeah.
Start pushing it in that direction. Make some sex jokes. Make some pitch in a tent. Whatever. I don't know.
But yeah, and then so she kind of pushes on it and just explains the cultural differences. He's like, we don't do this where I'm from. And he's like, well, do your teachers, hang out together and eat lunch together and spend all their time together? It's like, look, it's different here. We don't have these same hang-ups. She's like, none of it as much as the strange customs you barbarians have built around your sex play. And so
it's pretty funny the way she says it, actually, because she's like, Kvothe, you need to remember, you come from a barbarous place. Much of what you grew up thinking is quite wrong-headed and foolish. None of it as much as the strange customs you barbarians have built around your sex play. But just like the matter-of-factness, it's wrong and foolish. Yeah. Well, it's different. Doesn't mean it's wrong and foolish. It's just very different than what you guys do.
Yes. Yeah, their society would make me very uncomfortable with how casual they take it, and I would be more casual than some stiff person, but I would be much less casual than them. I would not be having sex out in the middle of the fucking public, like just go like, hey, I got this sweet spot out in the public, but it's just kind of this sweet spot, kind of off the road a little bit behind some bushes. Like we can
I
go
need to know.
knock it out right there if you want. Like
I
that would
need to
never happen.
know. I need to know. It's like where Andy Dufresne hid the box. You know what I'm talking about? Like it needs to be out in the middle of fucking nowhere. I need to be confident
Oh yeah,
that no one.
yeah,
That's what I. Yeah, it needs to be like way out.
yeah.
In the middle of fucking nowhere, where I can be very confident no one's coming up.
Yeah,
It's
I'm not.
uncomfortable, man.
There's not going to be a scenario where I'm having sex outside and someone trips over me, and then it's
Yeah,
like,
I'm not.
oh, hey, what are you
I'm,
doing? And I just look at him like, hey, what's up, buddy?
yeah, I'm. Yeah, I'm not a nudist, man.
No,
That type of thing. I wouldn't enjoy it on the other end. You know, I don't want to walk around and just like
I
say
don't want.
randomly.
Yeah, it would make me uncomfortable if people were fucking doing it. Public displays of affection. It makes is awkward. Like, what are you guys doing? Get a room.
Yeah.
Even though I've been on the other end of that,
sometimes
being like trashed and making out with someone or something. But like if you're watching that happen, it's sometimes it's funny because
yeah,
so
that's what I was
drunk.
about to say. That's
but
what I was about to say.
Other
Sometimes
times
it
it's
can be
like,
funny.
all right, guys, like settle the fuck down.
Yeah, sometimes it can be funny, but yeah, and if I'm completely sober,
Yeah,
especially if like I'm with my kids or something, then yeah, you need to fucking get the fuck out of here.
Yeah.
That shit. But yeah,
but yeah, so their society is way different, but they're very comfortable with it, and so that's just their thing. That's how they grew up, and that's how they live. They really are comfortable with it. And so she cuts him off. She's like, whatever you're about to say, I've doubtless heard it from my poet king. But there are only so many hours in the light of day. So I ask you this: are you desirous of sex? She's like, would you like to have sex with me? I could still smell her at the moment. I wanted it more than anything. Yes. Are you free of disease? And he's like, all right, then let's fucking go do this thing.
By the way, like again, this idea that it's no big there's nothing more intimate. I mean, you're literally going inside another person. What the fuck are we talking about? Like this isn't
one
intimate?
One of the things
like,
that would lessen it is they don't think you can get pregnant from this, or there's something different about them, and the men do not get women pregnant. That all their births are immaculate conceptions for some reason, because their biology is completely different. Which, okay, I mean, it's a fantasy world. If you want to create, I mean, female animals on this planet can get pregnant without having sex. Like, so there are animals that get pregnancy happens without sex, but it's very, very different from ours. And so, but if that's the case, whether it's true or not, the fact that they believe that pregnancy does not come from sex would significantly lower people's inhibitions.
True. But yet still, I mean, I'm not real comfortable with most people putting their finger in my mouth. You know what I'm saying? Like it's still
but you don't get any pleasure out of someone sticking their finger in your mouth.
Yeah, but I'm still saying it's a very intimate thing, is what I'm saying.
Yeah, but you get pleasure out of doing things. So that's much that's much different than sticking a finger in someone's mouth.
No, it's true.
Like, but I guess I get what you're saying, but I'm just saying like the pleasure would override that. Like it wouldn't but if there was no threat of pregnancy, that would significantly reduce the taboo surrounding it.
Yes.
Because you're not risking like saddling up with someone for the next 20 years every time you have sex with them.
Yeah, that's big.
Yeah, that's
never thought about it that way.
The risk is significant as far as, you might get stuck with someone for the next 20 years or so.
I just gotta be careful.
Yeah. But yeah, and so then they go and have sex, and she treats it, very casually. She doesn't there's no playfulness, no flirtation. She just strips down butt naked, and then he stares at her. She kind of laughs at him over that, like it's the first time he's seen a naked woman. He points out it's like first time I've seen one in the daylight. It's like, and then she goes and she strips him down naked. She's like stepping close. She stripped me as naked as a plucked chicken, then kissed me on the mouth, her warm skin pressing against the entire front of my body. Never kissed a woman my own height before. I mused when we stopped for a breath. It's different. It's a different experience. And then she goes, hey, I'm your teacher and everything. Next lesson, you'll see all women are the same height lying down. And she's got the line. The same cannot be said for your sort, of course. Too much depends on a man's mood or his natural gifts. Vashet took my hand and brought us to lie on the soft moss. There, she said, as I suspected, now you're taller than me. Does that make you set you at your ease? It did. And then that's it. There's no description of the sex whatsoever after that. That's it. He talks about the kissing, and then they lay down, and then they skip the entire part of the sex. He's like, I was prepared for things to be awkward after Vashet and I returned from the bushes and was surprised to find they were nothing of the sort.
Yeah, after she DDT'd him the fifth time, he was like, yeah, I guess we're still in the same position. Okay.
Yeah, and
then beat the shit out of me. Cool. All
it's
right.
like, in all, she acted as if nothing odd had happened, and nothing at all had happened, which meant either nothing odd had happened or something very odd had happened, and she was pointedly ignoring it, which meant that everything was lovely or everything was going terribly wrong. And so he's just classic Kvothe overthinking things. It's the same, and he doesn't have the middle ground, maybe things aren't that terrible, but there's just going to be a little bit of awkwardness that she's just ignoring it. But it's not that big of a deal. It doesn't have to be just lovely or terrible. It could be a whole range of things in between that. But his things he's like, oh, I should have kissed Denna, or I did too much. I ruined everything. She'll never speak to me again.
Yeah.
And it's like, dude, there is a fucking mountain of opportunities between those two extremes.
Possibilities.
Yeah.
Yeah, and with Denna, it does make sense in to some degree in the fact that he's so freaking he's set all his hopes on one person, and she disappears all the time. So he's reading a lot more into things, I would imagine, because of that. But then we see it here too, so it becomes a consistent thing with him.
Yeah, so he just starts thinking, he's like, Tempe didn't care about bathing naked in front of me, and there's no nudity taboo. The people I walked on in the garden having sex, they didn't seem to be bothered by that. He's like, so obviously things are different here. They view sex very differently than us. And he's like, so, he's like, normally I would go to Vashet with these, but I could see how that conversation could get weird. So, I will just go with the flow and follow my teacher's lead, follow what Vashet does. It's like, well, at least you came up with the right approach in the end, even with your overthinking.
Now, I know this isn't included in the books, but it just comes to mind how funny it would be if he overreads how familiar they are with sex and he just starts beating off them.
Yeah.
Whoa, dude.
He's just every time he gets a narb, he just drops his pants and starts taking care of it. He's like, what? I thought Vashet said, I get him, I take care of him. Right then and there.
I thought this was cool. We're not cool? I thought this was cool.
Just trying to fit in, guys. I don't even like doing this. This makes me uncomfortable.
Oh, man. Yeah, it's so funny to imagine he just goes there.
Oh, man. Some classic stuff. But yeah, so what do we got next week? We will have his continued lessons with Vashet. Oh, and we're going to get Celine. Celine's coming in. He's going to get his ass whooped by a little girl.
Yeah, he really... I guess those are the things that
Celine really likes boxing them nuts too, man. She's like, oh, man, I would not hit I would be very hard for me to hit a little girl. Like, I cannot picture a scenario where I would do it. But in this weird world where this little girl can beat the shit out of me and then she keeps punching me in the fucking nuts, at some point, because of how much she's thoroughly kicking my ass, I would be very tempted to like stop pulling my punches and start throwing haymakers. Like this.
Well, especially if she already knows
hit me in my nuts one more time, I'm gonna lose it.
Yeah, I was gonna say she already knows she can kick your ass. Why go for the balls?
Yeah.
If you already know you're dominating me, you got to go for my fucking nuts every time.
She's like, that's the quickest route to victory.
True.
Yeah.
But fuck you.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. That would be my reaction. It would be very hard to keep my temper if someone kept punching me in the nuts just because they can. It'd be very frustrating too if you couldn't stop them. Like, oh, you son of a bitch.
That's like a form of torture.
Yeah.
Like just not even just like knowing that's a possibility and having to be in the same space.
Like
a
and then
form of torture.
You're not a good fighter, so like you can't like defend it naturally. So you'd be like standing there cross-legged, and covering yourself up, just open up the rest of your body to attack.
So playing Little League Baseball, I used to stand right behind the backstop, and my oldest brother was playing, and he got traumatized me because he's batting, and he got fastball right in the balls. So that for the longest time, as I'm up to bat, I did what you just described, where instead of having those open stance, you're supposed to have when you're batting, I'm literally turned with my ass to the pitcher. Like my whole body's turned. Like, what? Why are you batting like that? Well, protecting the most important part of the body from getting blasted by a fucking fastball.
Until these kids get control of their fucking shit and can throw a ball down the middle of the fucking plate.
Yes.
Like I'm standing with my back to them.
That was always an interesting thing because, I mean, yeah, it's part of the game, but man, like you got kids the same age trying to throw fucking fastballs that can't control their pitches yet.
Yeah.
But against kids trying to bat. So, I mean, we wore helmets and all, but kind of turned me off for baseball.
Yeah. I never played baseball. It's the one sport I wish I would have played. Like, cause I love watching baseball and I've always loved the sport, but never played it.
The other issue that I had as a kid is, dude, I want to be, you had to wait for your moment.
Yeah.
And that's kind of a pain in the ass. Like at least with soccer, you're always there. The moment's coming and you can be confident of that. You're involved. You're always moving,
Yeah. I felt baseball probably would have been a good sport for me. I had like great hand-eye coordination. I was athletic, so could have fit in,
great.
There. But the I would have liked to have seen what I could have done playing baseball.
I was great in the field, and the best team I played for, the tryout, I hit a home run. I never hit a home run. I hit a home run in the tryout, and my other two, I had I think they threw 5 pitches at me. I hit 1 home run, another one hit the fence, 2 other went in the outfield. I looked phenomenal, and I was not that good.
Yeah.
I was not, well, especially after my brother got hit in the balls. It was like between that tryout and when the season started for me. So
I played softball once on the team I was on was terrible. None of us played baseball. And so like if you played a team that had former baseball players on it, they just annihilate us. But where I was good at it is like all I had to do was hit it on the ground and I could beat out the throw to first. And then if someone made the mistake of throwing behind me, like where I didn't need to like slide to a base, if they threw behind me, I was immediately running to the next base. And these are not professional athletes fucking turning around running the pickle. So like they would throw behind me all the way around the bases until I scored.
Yeah.
So you get some ridiculous plays in those softball games.
I got hit in the head running between first and second in a softball game.
That'd be fun. That would
make
me
want to
punch someone.
Yeah, it was a blast.
But yeah, speaking on the funny note of Tim getting hit in the head, wrap it up this week, and we will be back next week with Celine getting brought into the picture. So get them jock straps ready.
Yeah.
Peace out.
Get your cup.
Yeah.